The board is returned from closed session. No actions were taken.
And that too. We will, Lauren, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to remind everybody to speak really closely into the microphone so we capture it for the TV audience.
Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda as written?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5+1. Student, staff, community recognition, none tonight. Comments from the public related to items not on this agenda. Just as a reminder to everyone, each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. And because we have quite a few, I will name the speaker and then say next up, so you're kind of cued and ready to go. And the board does not respond to any of these public comments during this time. And so if you want to hear what we have to say, stick around for the later part of the meeting. Erendita Gonzalez. And then next up will be Cecilia Penaloza.
We're together.
Okay.
Jennifer, thank you for your time.
The reason we're here is to advocate for the families in Woodridge and also for the buses. Transportation is really important in my point of view. If imagine right now there's buses, there's a lot of traffic, stress in the morning. I can't imagine without no buses. I'm kind of scared that if most of the families decide to stay in Hatch, how many students are there going to be in the classroom per students? Is it going to be affecting the academics as well? Our teachers are going to stay without no jobs if there's no buses and students are going to be transferred? With Woodridge, I believe there's a lot of rumors. I just want to get some clarity regarding what's going to be the situation with them. And also, I feel that most of the families are trying to decide to come to Hatch, and if that's going to be denied to them, or what's the situation?
I'm just going to read a letter from, and a statement from Doctora Belinda Hernandez Arriaga from Alas, as she had to be at the Central Committee Democratic meeting tonight and unable to be here, but wanted this to be chaired by us. Dreaming forward for our students and community means giving a child a healthy and equitable opportunity to feel valued and supported in the schools they attend. For years now, we have heard how we are one community and how we want to see our Latino children succeed, along with all our children of the coast. How can this happen when we have inequality, when we hear stories of others not wanting to accept our children into Hatch, when we can see the beauty of the children in front of us and only see what we think are deficits? We are excited to see the parents are getting to make a choice of where they want their children to attend school, and we know that 90% we have select Hatch. We hope that they are welcomed with open arms, as they deserve to have a public school that believes in them, that can learn from teachers that see their possibilities, not that their deficits, and that they can have a school board that supports them and their families. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Cecilia Peñalosa. I am a proud graduate of Hatch and a recent graduate of UC Davis. And I am here just to support the Moonridge families because I am a strong believer in education and I believe everybody deserves a chance. Thank you.
Jim Ward. And after Jim, Avis Calhoun.
Good evening, Board. Before I start, I'd like to just respectfully ask that we consider having the next 2 to 3 board meetings for the rest of the year in a larger venue so that we can have more people represented from our community. That's been done in the past as past practice, and I've been shocked and surprised that it hasn't been done this year. Secondly, 21 years ago this week, or last week rather, I walked into the district office as a new teacher to California from Ohio with my 2 young children and my wife, and I became a teacher at CUNY a few months later, and I've been teaching in the district. I've been a teacher, an interim principal, a principal, and now I'm back in the classroom as a teacher and a proud union member. I would like to just say that I told my wife about the 0% raise offer the other night, and she couldn't believe it and had very strong feelings and sadness about the state of our district. A 0% offer of raise is untenable. It is disrespectful, and it's not good for our children, and it's not good for our community. I love and respect our students and our families. I came from spring musical rehearsal to be here tonight, and I'm heading back up there till 9:15 or 9:30 tonight. And I just pray that the board and the superintendent look at other means and think more deeply about these things. I know you care. I know you care about the children here, and I know many of you have children in the district, but it is untenable. Thank you.
After Avis will be Sean Reardon.
Good evening. I'm a teacher, 5th grade at El Granada Elementary. And I want to start what I have to say with an anecdote. And I'm going to share with you, earlier this week when I was teaching my students about reading, a reading workshop lesson, it focused on a word choice. And in other words, why writers use specific words. When we as readers examine those words, can we determine, does the writer have an agenda? Can we infer the writer's point of view if we look at those words with great attention? So I want to apply that lesson to our parcel tax renewal advertising, okay? And I'm thinking of the phrase that I saw in writing that said, retain high-quality teachers. That was on the advertising put out by the district to implore the public to renew the parcel tax. So let's apply the strategy of word choice to those words. First of all, the verb retain, keep. How? Well, likely with the expenditure of some money, perhaps a raise. High quality, those words were chosen specifically. High quality, what does that mean? Fine teachers. How do we keep fine teachers? By giving them decent salaries, right? Isn't that what's implied? So, I'm going to infer that the point of view of the district in the advertising for the parcel tax renewal was that teachers would get some of the money that would be brought in from that tax renewal, that we would get some compensation improvement. Okay? I think that makes sense. So now, let's think about the context of our negotiations. My understanding last spring, when many of us came here and spoke, There were proxies representing the board, and we were told we weren't going to get a raise at that time, but that a raise would be entertained upon the passage of the parcel tax renewal. We came to no agreement, but we understand that this was in good faith. That is the message that was given to us. And of course, much to many of our surprise, the tax passed. We teachers worked very hard to get that tax passed. Many of you may feel that you worked hard. We sure did. We went door to door. We talked to our neighbors. We talked to our friends. We appeared in advertising, right? Yeah? Right? The public understood. We have parents out here. They understood through that advertising that some of that money that was going to come in from that renewal was going to go to teacher compensation. They understood that. Now let's talk about right now with our negotiations. You offer no raise until a further, maybe nebulous, I'm not really sure, further cuts are made. Proxies for you gave excuses for the author. Maybe they said that we're the new regime, we were not here last spring. Okay, that's true. You were not here last spring, but you were. Okay, so that's why I speak directly to the board now. We know each other. We live in the same community. You have to, or else you couldn't get elected to this position. Most of us live here. We care about our students. You care about our students. We care about our students. You implied that we would get a raise if the tax was renewed. You hired a new superintendent and he got a raise and perhaps other perks. You approved an extra principal position at Hatch, even though Hatch has functioned in the past with current enrollment with one principal. You can direct your negotiating team to find some money to offer us a raise. I believe you can do this. You guys are in charge. You are. So, as Jim said, we're offended by your actions, and we're not sure, frankly, if we can trust you. We want to. Please show us that your past negotiations this spring were in good faith. Please show us that you respect us. You can make this happen. It's up to you, and I'm going to quote the great Spike Lee. You know what I'm going to say. Do the right thing.
Board members, yesterday at the Academic Council meeting, the final agenda item was morale. The scheduling debacle at the beginning of the year, yeah, we talked about it. Physical state and disrepair, definitely. Failing internet, on the list. Lack of campus supervision, definitely. But you know what? The biggest drag on morale is nothing. That's the nothing that you brought to the negotiating table last week. Your offer of nothing is going to be met with nothing. Nothing beyond the contract. No more clubs. Close our doors at lunchtime. No more voluntary work that this district has come to rely on. I guess nothing did get you guys something. It got you a room full of angry, motivated, united teachers. Thank you.
Laura Sanders, and then Claire Conlon, and then Claudia Lundstrup.
I'm a molecular biologist by training, but I've identified myself as a scientist from a very young age. When I was dismantling and then reassembling electronic devices behind the couch in my parents' living room. To my parents' chagrin, I used the space behind the couch because reassembly didn't always go as planned. But this is how I learned, through trial and error and hands-on exploration. In my career, I've mentored many young scientists, and I can tell you that book knowledge does not equate to success. You have to know how to ask the right question and then how to answer it. That's a skill that takes practice and persistence. Critical thinking skills that are learned in studying the sciences, I would argue, are skills that are important no matter what paths our students are going to take. The ability to make a hypothesis, gather data through observation and research, appropriately weigh the data on the reliability of the source, and then come to an evidence-based conclusion based on the totality of the information is important in becoming a productive member of society. We are bombarded with information constantly. We need to be able to discern fact from fiction and weigh the totality of the data before we make a decision. Scientific thinking is critical thinking. The earlier it's learned, the earlier it can be applied in all areas of study. This is why I'm disheartened that we are cutting the science specialist in our elementary schools. We are losing the dedicated time and space to learn by trial and error through guided hands-on exploration and application of the scientific method, learning how to think critically. Our youngest students have a natural curiosity, constantly asking why? 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 And we should be giving them the tools to harness that curiosity and transition it and foster a lifetime love of learning. I've heard that the teachers can do this in their classroom, and don't get me wrong, we have phenomenal teachers. But we keep asking them to do more and more without giving them any additional support. So let's talk about the data. Bottom 10th percentile. CUSD is 25th out of 27 schools for teacher salaries in San Mateo County. Up to 40%. The amount of wage increase a CUSD teacher could get by simply transitioning to another local district. $2,500. The amount of wage increase, the amount that separates the CUSD entry salary for from a family of 4 being qualifying for reduced or free lunches in our schools. And now I hear 0%. This is unacceptable. In November, I stood here and I asked you to make room in the budget cuts to give our teachers a well-deserved raise. It didn't happen. Last month, December, we heard from educators about the challenges they face living here, supporting their families on the low wages. We heard about inequities across the county in teacher salaries, and we listened as educator after educator pleaded with you for support. And we were reminded that the community has overwhelmingly demonstrated their support through the passage of Measure I. At the end of that meeting, Dr. McFrederick stood where I am standing now, and he looked into this sea of red, and he said, "We hear you, we will make it right." I wrote it down because I did not want that statement, that promise, to be forgotten. In that moment, I had hope that the system was working and our voices were being heard. A few nights later, I had the humbling privilege to walk with the teachers in the Night of Lights parade. And as I strolled down Main Street, listening to the community cheer on the teachers, listening to middle schoolers and high schoolers scream out to their kinder teachers, listening to the spontaneous chants of teachers, teachers, teachers break out along the parade route, there was no doubt in my mind that this community reveres, honors, respects, and supports their educators. Respected educators are effective educators. Again, to borrow from Hollywood, show them the money. Show us the numbers. Make it right.
Good evening. My name is Claire Conlon. I have 2 children who attend El Granada Elementary, where I've been volunteering for the past 3 years now. I have family members and friends who are teachers, so the reality of California's teachers being underpaid and facilities being underfunded and in disrepair isn't new to me. I've been hearing about budget cuts for years, long before I became a parent, and to be honest, I feel like I've just started to tune it all out. But as a parent of 2 young children in our public school system, I cannot afford to ignore the economic crisis within the Cabrillo Unified School District any longer. I'm here tonight to hopefully educate myself about this situation with the hope that we can together make better decisions and not make short-sighted, reckless ones we'll need to correct in the future. There's a lot of talks about cuts and funds being mismanaged, a top-heavy administration, and the age-old topic of teachers being underpaid. So I started reviewing the slides from December's board meeting this afternoon to hopefully get a better idea about what's on the chopping block. And unfortunately, I have more questions now after reading the vague reports. I can't be the only parent who's struggling to understand the specifics around what is really at risk here. For starters, I'd like to know, what's the budget? What are our costs of running the school district from the top down? And I mean line by line. Who and what are we paying for, and why do we need them or the service? And what are the deficits, and where are the redundancies? And I bring up redundancies because I come from a corporate America background, and I know that every organization has them. Once our community has a better understanding of where we are with all of this, I feel that together we can come to more reasonable and thoughtful decisions about what is best for us, our COSI teachers and students. And only then should we be making changes for the better. Our teachers are our biggest asset, and without them, our children have the most to lose from this financial crisis. Just because teaching has long been an underpaid profession, that doesn't make it right. It's our collective responsibility to take care of our children, our teachers, and our schools. Thank you for your attention.
Hello, my name is Claudia Lundstroth. I've been teaching at the high school for 20 years, and educators understand that students are more likely to thrive when they feel valued and respected. Just this year, teachers participated in professional development to help us show more respect and empathy to our students. Studies show that students, and just about everybody else, benefit emotionally and intellectually from respect and validation. But here in Half Moon Bay, despite the tireless efforts of teachers with up to 36 students in a class, students don't feel valued by the district. Not only do students see dilapidated buildings and failing technology, they see that not even their teachers are respected. When teachers are treated poorly, students internalize that. How can students feel worthwhile and motivated if they are not even worthy of teachers who earn a living wage? How can students feel worthwhile and motivated when they lose trusted teachers and counselors because of low salaries and inequitable health benefits? Teachers who work in Half Moon Bay have demonstrated that we are not in it for the money. We wouldn't be teaching here. However, we do expect respect and a living wage. Telling us that the district cannot afford to give us a raise is an insult. The money is there in the reserve fund. The conditions of the conditional 2% raise have been met. We are working at 2007 wages despite the passing of the partial tax. We are offered nothing. Our teachers are highly qualified, dedicated, and overworked, but these negotiations show that we are not valued or respected. This is a Xerox of, showing my age, a Xerox of from the district website to remind you that for the parcel tax, it said many times, retain qualified teachers. Thank you.
Tracy Yerby, Christina Tackett, and Abby Foster. Next three speakers.
Good evening, board members. My name is Dr. Tracy Yerby. I, along with quite a few other teachers here, have a unique opportunity to speak to you as a 20-year community member, a parent of 2 children who have attended coastside schools, and as a science teacher at Half Moon Bay High School, and a kindred molecular biologist. As a parent raising children, one a 2017 graduate of Half Moon Bay High School, now in college on the East Coast, sadly, and the other a senior at Half Moon Bay High School. My husband and I never wavered in our support of our public schools and education. We paid voluntary tuition at Farallon View. We spent hours as board members of the Old Ed Fund, of PTOs, Cunha Boosters, Cougar Boosters, and even organized several auctions over the years in order to ensure that all Coastside students had access to quality education. Through all of that, we assumed that our beloved teachers were being compensated commensurate with their experience and earning the same cost of living raises as their counterparts over the hill. And I emphasize cost of living raises, not raises based on seniority or other benefits, but of cost of living. These aren't questions you usually ask your child's teacher, and since our experiences were careers in the private sector, it was natural to assume that the same applied to a public teaching career. This is my 3rd year as a teacher. I've only taught at Half Moon Bay High School. I chose to teach in my community and to teach all of my community's children. They're my kids. We have amazing students and a very dedicated faculty. We appreciate the Coastside community and the very unique opportunity that is teaching on the coast. However, it's difficult to maintain our enthusiasm for the profession if we cannot earn a living wage with healthy benefits for our families. The reality is that these dedicated and beloved teachers can earn much more in other districts, up to $30,000 more base salary. We don't want to leave, and we know that teacher turnover is already a problem in our schools that leads to low morale and inconsistent education of our students, even though it might look good on the bottom line to hire teachers at the low end of the pay scale. I know that budget cuts are not unique to the Coastside. An article in today's San Francisco Chronicle highlighted budget issues in the San Francisco district, and ultimately, budget issues reside with inadequate state funding. However, we cannot rest on that and assume that the state will somehow give us more money. We need to do whatever we can, the school board needs to do whatever it can to retain our teachers and preserve quality education in our community. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Christina Tackett, and I come here tonight as a concerned parent and member of this community. I consider myself someone in the middle of the know, so I'm just going to go down some of my concerns as an average parent. I'm concerned that what little busing we have left is being cut, adding to our already bad commute traffic and congested roadways, as well as putting more children at risk when walking or having to cross Highway 1, or being on a Samtrans bus with Lord knows who, with no one held accountable for their well-being. And I'm very emotional, and I get upset when I'm super passionate or pissed off, and I hate it, but this is where I'm at. I'm concerned that we're cutting mental health services to the most vulnerable group out there that needs them, our innocent children. I'm concerned that we're cutting free breakfast and limiting free or reduced lunch program, potentially leaving kids to decide whether they would rather go hungry in the morning or in the afternoon. How does that sit well with anyone? I'm concerned with our school's infrastructure, and I'm saddened that my 2nd grader knows where to walk to avoid the leaks overhead in the hallway. I'm concerned that our educators are continuously undervalued, when in reality their jobs are the most valuable. How can we expect to retain qualified teachers when they can't afford to live here? And I'm concerned, amongst reading about all these cuts, that I also read that our new superintendent, who isn't a part of this community, started his position at a higher rate of pay than the last one left at, in addition to having a car allowance and expense account, which to me seems excessive. My hope is that the board members who are a part of this community and who do call the coast home this wonderful and unique community that we're lucky to be a part of. My hope is that you will stand for our children's rights, because who else will? Our children are our future, and they need to be valued as such. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Abby Foster. I spoke last month as well. I'm a teacher at Hatch School. I'm in my 24th year here, so it's been a long time. I've got a little bit of history, and I just want to begin by saying that I am the site rep at Hatch for the union, and I hope that you understand by looking around and by hearing the comments how serious we teachers are about our need to be compensated for the work that we do. We can't make it without a little bit more money. I spoke to you last month about that. But what I wanted to talk about tonight was the Moonridge and Main Street and Highway 92 and the cutting of the buses. I've been at Hatch since before those kids were bused, and then I was there for the decision of moving to bus them. And the reason that decision was made was for equity. I appreciate the other speakers' comments about letting the students have the choice, and I believe we always have had that through open enrollment. But my experience has been that both Hatch and Farallon View are more balanced and more equitable by having the balance of the two different of the different socioeconomic levels and races, ethnicities. That being said, I would love to have the Moonridge kids back. We miss them. We fought to keep them back in the day, and I personally would love to have them at my school. I'm worried about the impact by having that many more students. It's not any particular group of students, it's how many students we're talking about bringing to Hatch. We're talking about, the number I heard was 80, and we currently have 2 empty classrooms, 1 empty and 1 being used for an after-school program, so theoretically 2 empty classrooms. So I'm wondering where those 80 kids are gonna go. When we began the construction for Hatch, the decision was made at the district level to scale back and to not make more classrooms to make room for growth. It was decided that we didn't want Hatch to grow. So therefore we did not build more classrooms than what we needed. We have a little bit of leeway, a little fluctuation in numbers here and there, but we really can't accommodate that many students. So I'm not sure. And the mention was made of the new regime. Dr. McFetters, you're new. A lot of you have been here for several years, at least a few. Most of you parents have been here. I've known you for many, many years. But I've been here longer, and I can tell you that the decision to redistrict was made with a lot of thought and care and research into what was going to work for the district, for Hatch, for Farallon, for the Moonridge students, for the Highway 92 students, and for the Main Street students. And maybe changes do need to be made, but I just really, really hope that you'll take the time to do that same research that was done previously and to make sure that we're really making the right decision for all students and that it's not a decision based on finances and saving money on buses, because we really need to do what's right for all the students. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Shannon Murray, and I'm here to comment on the removal of busing as well. My apologies for being a bit late. I didn't realize it was published on the original list. I look now and see transportation reduced, and I realize it was lost in my own translation. So thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I come to you wearing 3 hats. Hat number 1, I am a reading intervention teacher at Hatch, primarily in the English program. I teach in English. I also work with English students in immersion when they're learning English. I love my job. I love my students. I work tirelessly. I'm passionate about what I do, and I support our most at-risk youth. I will continue. My commitment to you, the board, is that no matter who my students are, I will work hard for them as well. However, that said, I am one person. I have a long waiting list. I I'm unable to fill our current need. I work with Miss Leva, who teaches in Spanish, and being myself in English, we still have more students I can't serve. I try to innovate every year. I work on new successful interventions, but in the end, we know that successful interventions are focused and they're intensive. And I implore you to please look at the data as we intake students. Are we prepared to serve them? I'm concerned that with the large influx of need, students that are less than perhaps 2 grade levels below are simply cut from services. That would look like a 3rd grader who's reading at a 1st grade level. We might not be able to fit them in. I'm only one person. Is this what we want? Hat number 2, I am a Hatch parent. I have children in both programs, one in English, one in immersion. We've been blessed with amazing teachers. We're really lucky. But as a parent, I know that Hatch is already crowded. When I ask my children, how was your day? About 50% of the days, the conversation has to do with the cafeteria. It's loud. There are a lot of bodies in the cafeteria. We have an amazing Blue team. They're doing a fantastic job. They're skilled, they're engaged. We're very lucky to have them. But I honestly can't imagine more bodies in the room. I struggle when I pick up my students just with the own noise as an introvert to myself. It's a lot. I feel that that's only the tip of the iceberg in terms of overcrowding. Support personnel will be spread more thin, liaison, behavior supports, counseling, psychologist. Will our PTO even be able to fund art, music, PE, library with growing numbers? Is this what we want? My 3rd hat, I'm a community member. I've lived in Coastside Town since 2000. I'm concerned this is a step backwards, and I'm concerned this is a civil rights issue. Ms. Cortez, I have tremendous respect for you. I know that your engagement with the Latino community has always been a priority. I watched the December board meeting. I value your comments. I know that you're engaging and wanting to get input. And I implore, please make sure that the community outreach is one full of education and depth for this monumental decision. In the New York Times, April 2016, I quote, "Children in the schools with the highest concentration of poverty score an average of more than 4 grade levels below children in the richest. Even more sobering, the analysis shows that the largest gaps between white children and their minority classmates emerge in some of the wealthiest communities, such as Berkeley, California, etc." Let's please be clear when we engage with our community. We are talking about segregation, resources spreading thin, overcrowding, a high concentration of socioeconomically disadvantaged children. Currently, I believe we're around 47, 48%. And in rough estimates, imagining these children in our traditional program, very rough estimates, I'm getting 75 to 80%. I'm concerned we're reversing decisions that were the result of a civil rights lawsuit in the 90s. Please do not rush this decision. Does busing cause an inherent problem? Yes, I worked at Fairlawn View, I understand. Will concentrating the at-risk youth at one school solve this problem? In my informed, passionate, equity-based opinion, no. Thank you.
Good evening, Happy New Year. For public record, I'm Brianna LaFontaine. I am the PTO president at El Granada. I am a parent at El Granada, and I am a community member. And I am speaking as a parent and community member today. I wrote something. I had my kids time me over and over again to follow the rules and stay within 3 minutes. I had other parents read it. And then after meetings this morning, discussions this afternoon, PTO meeting on Tuesday, listening to parents and teachers here tonight, I think I need to go a little off script, and if I get emotional, I apologize. This was full of statistics and there was no emotion behind it, and I don't know how I can't get emotional with what is going on. My topic this evening was busing. I can't get over the loss of busing. When I looked at the Samtrans schedule, I wanted to know when Moonridge got to Hatch, how would that look for them? The bus stops on the east side of Highway 1. So TK through 5th, 4 to 11-year-olds have to cross through highway twice a day if they take the bus. Students who live in Moonridge would, who are in TK or end at 11:15, the next bus isn't till 12:01, getting them home at 12:15, an hour after school ends. And what are they doing for that 45 minutes when school ends and the bus picks them up? Do you know who's going to be watching them when they're not on time? Our teachers, who we're not paying. At El Granada, for the kids who are on 92 and Main Street, our school gets out for K to 3, 2:05 p.m. The bus does not leave until 2:45, getting students home at 3:10, an hour after school gets out. 4th and 5th graders at my school get out at 2:45. The next bus for them is 3:44, getting them home almost an hour and a half after school is over. 3:30 is when I believe our teachers are off the clock. But I know my El Granada teachers, and they can tell me that they don't later, but I know them, and they're going to keep their doors open for the students. Because as you saw today, we're not gonna have kids out in hail and rain while they're waiting for a bus. And that bus stop is where 4 intersections merge to get onto Highway 1. There's no crosswalk there. There are parents trying to leave and get out in a very small space. It is frustrating to me that teachers who work so hard, who are there when they're not asked to be, who I see on the weekends, who I see at night, who I hear working over the break to make themselves better for my kids, got a 0% offer. And then I realized today, why am I going down this rabbit hole of gathering all this information? I'm not an elected official, and I am sure not getting paid for this. But then I realized it's because I'm able to be here, not for a socioeconomic reason, just because that's how my family can work. I work over here on the coast, I work part-time. My husband is able to come home when I have important meetings so that I can be present and gain this knowledge from you. I am so, I feel so happy that on Tuesday at our PTO board meeting, when part of this came up, that parents came out today and they felt that they had someone that they could ask, that because I've been here, I've been able to be here. But most parents can't make this meeting, and not knowing how to look at the website or that there is even something like busing being taken away from them. When I asked a parent at El Granada today, do you know that a bus is being taken away from you? They had no idea. How do we get that out to the parents? How do we get their input? How do we get more community involvement without just a few of us who aren't elected, who don't use this as their profession, who's just trying to gain knowledge? I'd rather you guys, who this is your job, who this is where you have decided to put your time, put that out there. I did go off, and this is where I was like, oh shoot, I knew I would go off on you guys, and I apologize. So I want busing. I think you've heard that, and I want our teachers to get paid more. That's my bottom line. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kathleen Mall, and I also want busing, and I want our teachers to get paid more. I know that all of you on the board want what's best for our students, and I've actually been here a long time, 2 years longer than Abby. I remember when Abby was a new teacher. And I want to talk about busing again, because as you know, as the population center of the coast side, Half Moon Bay has the majority of elementary students. But because there's only one elementary school in town, the students need to be spread through the elementary schools in El Granada and Montera. Last time I was up here, I said that I live less than a mile away from here, yet I live in an El Granada neighborhood. And that's the way it works. There's lots of Half Moon Bay kids that are, the school attendance is in another town. The school attendance areas were set up by prior boards to balance the number of children at each school. And Hatch Elementary School is the closest school to most of the elementary students in the district. And it could be argued that Hatch is the home school for the majority of children on the coast. No one is against changing school attendance areas and open enrollment policies. However, I beg you to do it with due diligence. Before making any decisions regarding open enrollment for all, I urge the board to find out the rationale for the present school attendance areas and to speak with prior board members about the history. They are still here in the community. In fact, I don't know if she's here tonight, but Marina Storia, who was on the board in the late 1990s, approached me in the hallway after I spoke at the December board meeting. And she said, "Thank you for saying something. I can't believe this is happening." She was here with the Kings Mountain contingent as a grandparent. She said we had a civil rights lawsuit in the 90s that required busing to happen. As a community, we respect prior elected boards and their decision for the good of our schools. To eliminate busing and embrace universal open enrollment would undermine the hard work, research, and time that went into the decision to ease the overcrowding at Hatch and offer, most importantly, equitable educational opportunities to all our coastside kids. To eliminate busing and give the affected families open enrollment to Hatch is an end run around the thoughtful and deliberative decisions made by prior elected community members in order to save about $100,000 of an over $36 million budgets. There are so many unintended consequences to this decision. The population of Farallon View will shrink further, which is not a good use of resources. The elimination of busing to El Granada and open enrollment for all affected students will further shrink El Granada School, also not a good use of resources. The open enrollment for all scheme to Hatch will swell the numbers and crowd the school. Hatch's renovation is still incomplete. The original renovation plan was scaled down from 6 transitional kindergarten rooms to 5 rooms because the overall plan under Tony Rorick was to have more balanced numbers at El Granada and Farallon View, thus eliminating the need for a 600 student plus mega school. So welcome back mega school, which at one point we had 670 kids at Hatch. Something else. Rumor has it that the portable classrooms will remain at the new mega school, keeping portable classrooms while the community is paying hundreds of dollars in property taxes per year to have new schools. This will thrill taxpayers as they drive down Highway 1 and view the eyesore portable classrooms jammed against the cyclone fence. I think it's a public relations disaster. Teachers will be involuntarily transferred from Farallon View and El Granada to Hatch to accommodate the open enrollment numbers. It also creates two of our 4 elementary schools, Kings Mountain and Farallon View, will be high-income schools. This seems to be intentional, I'm not quite sure, because it was stated at the last meeting that without low-income kids at Farallon View, the community liaison position could be eliminated. And that statement is on film. This is a very dangerous road to travel, and you can ask the school board in Sausalito what happens when you allow choice and the California State Attorney General's office starts to investigate. The decision to eliminate busing is being framed as a give to the community. This so-called give is school choice, and families affected by the elimination of busing can choose a different school. But this is not a give, it's a take. This decision takes away school transportation from low-income families. It gives low-income families the cost of transporting their children to school. The decision takes away the educational opportunities of integrated schools for low-income students. It gives low-income students segregated schools. Do you ever doubt yourself? Because I doubt myself all the time. Last week, I asked our CTA representative, Michelle Washington, am I crazy to be upset about the elimination of busing when parents are given choice? And Michelle responded, in communities of color, choice is a code word for everybody but us. So here are two great school choices. Number one, Kings Mountain School. Everybody can go there, but only if you have a parent to drive you there every day. Your other choice is Farallon View School. It was your school, and everybody can go there, and you can choose to continue to go there, but you need to get there yourself because we are eliminating your transportation. Oh, sorry, you can't go there because no one can drive you. Educational research repeatedly shows the benefits of socioeconomically and racially integrated schools. There are overwhelming research findings that on average, students in socioeconomically and racially diverse schools, regardless of a student's own economic status, have stronger academic outcomes than students in school with concentrated poverty. Creating schools with over 50% low-income students is educationally unsound. I beg the board to study this issue. Talk to former board members, talk to teachers, and familiarize yourself with the educational research. I'm always happy to talk. Thank you for your time.
After Christy, we'll have Misty Veloso.
Good evening. I actually wasn't planning on speaking tonight. I thought I might come to a board meeting for a change and not speak. My name is Christy Walker, and I am a parent and a community member. And I just heard today about the offer given to the union, and I am very concerned. And I just heard about it today, so I don't know all the details. However, part of this process that the board and the community has been going through for the last several months continually was talked about how the teachers deserve raise, they need raise, we want to retain, and I worked hard getting the word out and going out, knocking on doors for Measure I, and part of that promise to the community and the teachers was to do things to retain teachers. And I'm very concerned if we are not offering them a raise, that is not going with promises that have been made to this community. And in fact, my understanding from sitting in meetings the last several months is that part of the reason that you guys agreed to do more cuts than was actually necessary was to give room for there to be some raise offered to the teachers. It was discussed as part of those discussions. I don't know that you necessarily voted on that particular aspect of it, but it was definitely part of the conversation as to why additional cuts needed to be made, in addition to coming all the way so we could get out from underneath being watched over so closely by the county, but also to give us some wiggle room to make right with our teachers, who are such an asset to our school district, and really none of the other cuts make any difference if we don't have the teachers that we depend upon. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Misty Veloso. I stand here today holding quite a few hats on my head. I am an alumni of Half Moon Bay High, Cabrillo Unified School District, El Granada, and Cunha. I am a parent. I have a high schooler. I'm a community member, so I pay taxes. And I'm a teacher. I've taught in this district for 22 years. It's my 22nd year. So it was really hard for me to come up with what I wanted to say tonight, because boy, do I have a list of things I could say, wearing all those different hats. But when I'm listening to my colleagues and parents in our community, I'm hearing something underlying to what they're all having to say to you tonight. And it has to do with communication, which is what I came here tonight to talk about. You know, as an educator, that word is so heavy, it's weighted so heavily. We're evaluated on how well we can communicate with our students, with our parents, our community, with our administration. And when you're effectively communicating, there's this sense of calmness and comfort. And when you're not communicating, chaos breaks out. And stress and anxiety and fear overpower everything. I think at this moment, presently at Cabrillo Unified School District, parents, teachers are feeling chaotic. They're feeling like they're under chaos right now. You can feel it in the room tonight. I just have to say that we are back to a top-down style of management, receiving information via press releases, emails, or if you're fortunate enough to look through a budget and find a line item. You know, I don't know, but when the Cunha parents find out that the sports program is changing dramatically, be ready, because they don't know. They don't know. I'm sitting in gyms for 4 days a week. I know. I just really want to ask, is that really what we're going to go back and do? Because out of 22 years of working in this district, that style of management doesn't work here. This community's small, it's different, we all talk to each other. And at the end, we all gather together. I ask you to please include teachers, include the community in these decisions. Don't operate in a vacuum. You're going to go a lot further in these decisions by communicating and asking for collaboration. And I think you guys know that.
And that ends our comments from the public section. I want to thank everyone for coming out and sharing your concerns. This is very meaningful for the board. And so please know that while we can't respond right now in this section, that we really appreciate everyone being here. Our next item on the agenda are representative reports. First up is CUTA representatives.
After so many great speeches, I don't know what else to do, so say. So my name is Ramon Macias. I'm CUTA co-president with Heidi Mills. Good evening, board members, Dr. McFetrich, and all of those in attendance. I was hopeful that I was going to come to this board meeting with positive news about our last negotiation meeting. Unfortunately, this is not the case. After the union waited patiently for approximately 5 months before meeting with the district, I am assuming with the director of the board, offered CUTA a 0% raise. We were told that, and I quote, under the current financial situation, there is no possibility of a raise until after the $2.6 million in cuts have been implemented. CUTA strongly opposes this decision. At the table, Greg Dennis, the district attorney, reminded us how CUTA always stepped up and held Cabrillo during difficult situations. We were asked if we were ready to do that again. Let me remind you how educators are already doing just that. At the elementary level, classrooms are now being cleaned on a daily basis. Guess who's taking care of that? Teachers. Ask Ms. Mills about how she spent a few days over the summer washing her own classroom carpet because it wasn't done. At the high school, the lack of security is a big concern for staff. But even if they feel unsafe, they show up every morning ready to educate our students. Acuna, where should I begin? 4 months, students and staff in Building C had to deal with unacceptable temperature room conditions because of the lack of response from the district fixing this issue. As of right now, we still have 2 classrooms without a proper heating system. Teachers never know they're going to walk into their classroom at 50 degrees Fahrenheit or 80. Even under these circumstances, teachers still make it work every day. I can go about leaking faucets in Building C, the lack of hot water needed in the science rooms, the lights that don't turn off or don't stay on, doors that don't necessarily close properly. The list goes on and on and on and on. Board members, if you are interested in the list, I am sure Dr. Mafetrich can provide you with a copy. There are items in the list that were added back in August and have not been addressed. We also have the issue of Chromebooks that don't work. Teachers email each other asking to borrow theirs in order for students to finish typing their essay. That is, if the Wi-Fi works. Guess who pulls through all these issues? Educators and students. We just make it work. I almost forgot about the $2.6 million in cuts coming up next year. Cunha is losing a supervisor, Fairland View a community liaison. We're losing a psychologist, no more free breakfast for students, and no more sports at Cunha, which by the way, the sports program currently provides an extra income to many of our staff members. Lastly, Measure I, the one that says that money would be used, among other things, to retain qualified teachers. Mr. Riordan organized educators to go out and rally in support of Measure I. I was there with other educators with signs from 3:45 until 5 p.m. at the intersection of 92 and Main Street. Ms. Mills spent multiple weekends and worked with a group of parents and went door to door asking voters to support Measure I. And of course, educators who live on the coast who voted yes. Ms. Hines, Ms. Cortez, Ms. and Ms. Lane, sorry. Oh, and Ms. Alexander. I had the following question for you. If CUTA always steps up to help the district during difficult times, when is the district going to step up and finally give educators a fair contract? Thank you.
Can all my red for ed people stand up, please? Woo! Thank you. So, board members, I just want to remind you, we are educators looking for respect, right? Respected educators are effective educators. And my red for ed people, what do we want?
Fair contract!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Fair contract!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Fair contract!
When do we want it?
Now!
Thank you.
Do we have a CSEA representative tonight?
Good evening, board members, president, superintendent, and staff. So first I want to just say a few words. The CSEA, who is the representative for all the support staff in the district. We had election in the November, December here, and I was re-elected as president. Diane Pirlo was re-elected to vice president. Mayra Rodriguez are the secretary, and Steve Goldberg are the treasury. So that is our board. We all need to have better pay, absolutely. And I totally support the teachers to get a fair raise who reflects in the area where we live. So do also the CSA member. Unfortunately, I don't have that. I'm going to be the little green share. I need to fight for keeping classified staff so we can support you guys. That is what I'm going into negotiation to do. So we can keep jobs here in the district. So we can keep the classroom clean. So we can bus our kids, feed our kids, and make sure that internet working. also can't only go and be towards our community here. We also need to look up to the state. The state is the one who have for years underfunded our schools in California. We need to write letters. We need to really go and talk to our elected people who sits in the state assembly, because they are the one who can affect it. We have a governor in California who also needs to change his way how he do stuff, and he needs to fund our schools. That's also all I have to say for today. Thank you.
Next up are reports and presentations, the academic performance indicators. Are we meeting the needs of all students?
Good evening, board members. We are here, Dr. Bhatia and I, to talk a little bit about our performance indicators, how our students are doing, and what we are doing to help support all learners. So our agenda tonight is full. We're going to present you some data. We're going to look at a review of our most recent dashboard data. We're going to talk about state and local data. We're going to talk about the implications to our goals and initiatives. We're going to look at our LCAP and look at how we're doing in terms of meeting those goals and objectives as they relate to our student outcomes. And we're going to talk about projected goals for 2021. So I'm presenting to you tonight a new infographic from the state of California. What they've done here is they have integrated all of the good work that we've been trying to do over the years, and our teachers are doing, and our students are accessing every day to try to improve the student outcomes that we're seeing. So what you see here is in the center of this star is the term cradle to career, which is basically a whole child approach. So we're looking at how do we support our youngest learners and how do we prepare those youth for what's next, college or career, or whatever their next step is after they leave us. Within the star are the elements of our LCAP. How do we create safe schools? How do we ensure that our students are engaged in our classrooms? How do we make sure that we have supports for all students to be successful in our classrooms? How do we look at a growth mindset to make sure that we're challenging our students and we're making sure that all students have access to a curriculum that meets their needs? And how do we ensure that our students are healthy in our schools? On the outside of the star, we see all of the elements of our LCAP. So it's kind of nice sometimes to see an icon or an emblem that helps you kind of disaggregate a very, very comprehensive plan, which our LCAP is, over 100 pages, I'm sure. But really what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that the conditions of learning for our students, the engagement of our students, and our student outcomes are all aligned to make sure that every child, every day in Cabrillo Unified has access to a high quality curriculum and to learning that is helping them grow. We've been talking about this particular graphic for several years. A couple of years ago, we were invested in our MTSS work through a cohort of districts, a consortium, and we were funded very minimally to begin the work of looking at our multi-tiered systems of support. Multi-tiered systems of support is a way to integrate a framework to make sure that all of our students have access to learning in key areas. So we look at how most of our students will access Tier 1. Tier 1 is every day, every classroom, all of our students have access to high quality first instruction. And those students have access within those contexts to make sure that we are making sure all students have equal access to meaningful instruction. Within that classroom, within that universal Tier 1, we often find students who are not accessing the curriculum in a way that is helping them to succeed. So we look at tiered intervention, Tier 2, to make sure that we have interventions to help engage those students in learning, and we provide specialized instruction, intervention, and other means to make sure that they're successful. So when we say all means all, we are looking at a way to integrate all of the great work that our teachers are doing in classrooms, all of the social emotional learning that students need to feel safe in our schools, all of the behavioral supports that our students need, as well as the academic instruction that they need. Our LCAP integrates this as a part of its core, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, how we integrate the work of our leadership, our frameworks, our engagement opportunities for families, and also our inclusive practices across the district. And we'll connect those to our LCAP when we talk a little bit more about that tonight. I present Dr. Bhatia.
Good evening, board members, cabinet, community. So I'm here, so thank you, Dr. Wade. The next slide, oh, oopsie, let's see, there we go. So the next slide will talk a little more of that instrumental piece of making sure that we make explicit connections between our MTSS framework that Dr. Wade so eloquently described, as well as LCAP. And beginning February, we will begin to engage all of our stakeholder and community groups, our unions, in taking a look at the 2020-2021 LCAP. The LCAP format has changed this year, and so we are working with the county office in training us on how that is formatted. But please know that our LCAP goals, our 4 LCAP goals, will remain the same. And this slide will make a visual connection of the 4 pillars of MTSS along through the LCAP goals. Our LCAP Goal 1 is focused on college and career, as well as English learner support. And please know that we are definitely using data, and I'll talk more about the data piece in a few slides, and making an explicit decision on research-based practices, services, additional programs to support our very hardworking classified and certificated staff to ensure that they also have the tools and the supports to meet the needs of all our students. Our LCAP Goal 2 is around student engagement, and as you can see, student engagement begins with us, with administration and leadership and our principals, in ensuring that we give those tools to the people that are on the field, our teachers, our classified staff, to give that rich, engaging learning opportunity for our students. And all means all, and when we look at all means all, it's all the community. Our LCAP Goal 3 focuses on parent involvement. Our parents are an instrumental piece to making sure that our students are successful. And very important to making sure that not only are our students in LCAP Goal for a positive school climate, that our students are obtaining a strong academic foundation, but we also set a safe environment in making sure that we support their social emotional development. So the dashboard data, we have currently entered into differentiated assistance status through the California Department of Education. And a differentiated assistance we use different data indicators that we looked at the STAR. There are 8 to 10 indicators depending on the local education agency. And these indicators will ask and give our county offices of ed the opportunity to support district offices in a cycle of continuous improvement. And so, I'm sorry, I think I skipped a slide. And the gap between actual practice and the most effective practice, we need to make sure as we engage in this cycle of continuous improvement, we are looking at research-based practices to ensure that our programs and services at the school site are really helping in closing that achievement gap. Now this slide here talks about exactly what is this cycle of continuous improvement. And so we have engaged in differentiated assistance. the state has now told county offices, you need to use a tool such as the cycle of continuous improvement to support district in closing that achievement gap. And later on, I'll show data of where specifically we were targeted on differentiated assistance. And this cycle of continuous improvement talks about the planning process. And if you look at steps 1, 2, and 3, first, we need to make sure that we set a purpose and direction, and we're using the LCAP as a tool to set that purpose and direction, the 4 LCAP goals. Number 2, we need to assess local needs and determine factors of greatest need. This is also part of the planning process. We need to use data in order to ensure that we determine what that pathway looks like. Number 3, we need to plan for the improvement cycle, and this is where the research-based practices are. Many times, and if we really take a look at the multiple programs and services offered at every single school site, we have multiple programs, some that are district approved, some that are approved by the school site, some that are wonderful PTOs have used funding or private funding to purchase. But this is a time where we need to go slow in order to move fast and ensure that all practices, programs are research and evidence-based, that there have been research that other local education agencies and schools have used these programs and services to really help close the achievement gap. And one such example is what Dr. Wade has done in the past at beginning the dyslexia committee. Our district is ahead of the game with this amazing work, and our amazing intervention teachers at the elementary site in working with Acadians and also volunteer teachers that have volunteered to pilot our foundations curriculum. So we have already, this is just one example of what this continuous improvement cycle means. It is not new knowledge. They're just using a different name to kind of describe a cycle of inquiry. And I'm trying to show you that example that we have already started to engage in different cycles here at Cabrillo Unified School District. So again, 1, 2, and 3 is the planning part. Now the doing part is the implementation and the monitoring of work. Using the dyslexia committee as well as the Acadians and intervention programs, strong intervention programs that we have here at the elementary sites, we are starting to implement the work. We not only have our intervention specialists, but we also have our volunteer classroom teachers that are using foundations, and we are seeing a lot of positive success. And most also important is number 5, to reflect and adjust courses. Through the dyslexia and the intervention committee and Dr. Wade's work, we're meeting with our intervention specialists, looking at the data, reflecting and determining which kids have met proficiency or have shown growth. Do we need to have kids to enter the intervention system? And so this is continuous improvement, and just letting you know it's not anything new. We have already done that work here at Cabrillo, and we will continue to receive support from the County Office of Ed in this cycle of continuous improvement. So what drives this continuous improvement cycle? Now this is true for state education agency, LEA schools, and individuals. Now using Alice in Wonderland and the Cheshire Cat from Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland, as a district, we need to make sure that we're clear on the direction that we're heading. How do we know where we're heading? If we, as the Cheshire Cat told Alice, if we don't care where we're going, then it really doesn't matter which way to go. And so using data will define those pathways and making sure that we know where we're heading and we're clear as to what our end goal is in order to make sure that we support all the students here at Cabrillo Unified School District. Sorry about that. Okay, so now the data. So I want to just begin by saying that my portion of the data presentation today is just one slice of the bigger picture. This is a quantitative data, but I want to make sure that we also understand there is rich qualitative data within the classroom that many times may not reflect this one single piece of data. And later on, we also have local some formative assessment data that will be presented by Dr. Wade. And so here's another slide on the differentiated assistance. Differentiated assistance CDE uses data and has just released a list of districts that qualify for and are eligible for differentiated assistance. Now, districts qualify if there are 8 to 10 indicators, depending if it's a county district or a local district. And if we have one student group that lands in red or a lower category for 2 priority areas, you become eligible for an opportunity to receive differentiated assistance support from the county. At Cabrillo, we are working with the county, and there are 2 subgroups of students that qualified us for this assistance. This was our English learner subgroup, as well as our socioeconomically disadvantaged subgroup of students. Now, I do want to say that we added a few slides, and this is the first time that the board as well as the community is seeing these slides that digs a little bit deeper. This information just came up to us the last few days. So we wanted to share the comparison of where Cabrillo Unified is compared to the 24 school districts in San Mateo County. And that little arrow would show you where Cabrillo is. And to the columns, so the left are the school districts, but starting at the second column, you see the indicators where we had a significant number of students where we could measure our performance. For chronic absenteeism as a whole, looking at all students, we were in the yellow, and in comparison to the other districts in the county, I would say maybe right in the middle. We are in the orange for suspension and graduation rate. Again, not looking at subgroups, just looking at all students at Cabrillo Unified. I want to congratulate the high school, the teachers, the classified staff, because for college and career, that was a green indicator. And orange also on the English language arts and math. And you can see that we do not have any red as a school as a school district in a whole. So congratulations for all of us, because we have definitely met the needs of most of our students here at Cabrillo Unified. Now, with the dashboard, with the change in the presentation of data, in particular California dashboard, the California Department of Ed wants to ensure that we are looking deeper at certain specific subgroups. In the next 2 slides, I will only focus on the 2 subgroups where we qualified under differentiated assistance. Okay, so here we have our English learner subgroup. We have Cabrillo Unified School District, and we have 4 indicators in the red for our English learner subgroup specifically. Keeping in mind that we have multiple student subgroups, and we're only pointing out just one of the multiple because we are very successful in meeting the needs of the other subgroups. And as you can see on this slide, we have 4 areas, and when we compare it to other districts, they might have 2 or 3 for English learner subgroup. Now, I also wanted to point out that we have, surprisingly, only 22% of students at Cabrillo are English learners, because most of our students here might come in with as English only students. Our Hispanic Latino population is higher. We're at 45%, but being Hispanic Latino doesn't necessarily mean that you're an English learner, because we have 2nd and 3rd generation Hispanic Latino families that might not speak a second language at home or other, that's our concentration, is Spanish here at Cabrillo. Now, if you take a look at the second subgroup where we qualified for support from the county are our socioeconomically disadvantaged students. And we compared to other districts, we did most other, I believe there were only 6 other districts in the county that had some red, and we all had approximately 2 red for this subgroup, and that was under the suspension rate and mathematics. Okay, now I'm gonna go back here because it's, like I said, it's just one piece of one piece of data is not the only indicator of performance, because we might also have local assessments that might not have the same percentage, because this is a test that we take, it's a summative test, we take it once a year. And so for the academic indicator, I wanted to demonstrate how our students all of our students are performing for the English Language Arts Smarter Balance Assessment Consortium assessment that actually is coming up in April. And this chart here will demonstrate English Language Art performance as an entire district of Cabrillo. And you have just grade level performance across the columns, but I've color coded in red and yellow across so that we can take a look at cohort data. And as you can see, the percentage is approximate. There was definitely an increase in the cohort of third grade 3 years ago, because in 2019 they're performing at proficiency at 54.92%. And you can take a look, some are approximately 2 to 3% difference, but something that we definitely want to work in collaboration with our educators is trying to see how can we increase more students at Cabrillo to be at proficiency. And we asked that question, are we okay with 54.92% of all students being at proficiency? And again, linking the cycle of continuous improvement, we'll be working with our principals to support individual sites and digging deeper on granular detail on specific students to ensure that we meet the needs of our students. And again, using this visual and looking at, again, these are all students, but what does it look like for our English learners, in particular these two subgroups, right, that are not performing, and the percentage is in around 80% of our English learners are not performing at proficiency. Our socioeconomically disadvantaged students, about the same percentage. And so this is, again, it's a cycle. We need to work together and work piece by piece. We need to work with small pieces of data. And Dr. Wade is going to share some of the amazing work that we're already doing. And again, linking some of this data to our local control accountability plan, and really talking to our educators of what exactly they also feel can support us with services and actions, additional intervention specialists, ELD specialists at the site, to really support this subgroup of students that are not there yet, because they will be there with a collaborative approach to solving this achievement gap. And then we look at mathematics, and I do want to point out that this trend in mathematics is statewide. Statewide, all our students in California are performing lower in math than they are in English language arts. And again, it's a cycle of continuous improvement. What are some research-based practices? Where exactly are the gaps and the highest need? And let's strategically work as a team to really push in the resources to support our groups of students. Okay, and here is another visual that you'll see from the California dashboard in English language arts, because it is also important for us to celebrate the successes, because we are supporting our students who are 2 or more races, our white subgroup of students. And in this slide, I definitely want to point out the amazing work of the dyslexia committee and our intervention specialists and our special education specialists, because last year we had our students with disabilities that were in the red, and this year we made amazing growth with this targeted cycle of continuous improvement and focused support for our students with disabilities. So congratulations on that growth. Our English learners went from orange to red, but again, we will work together and communicate and figure out as a team, how can we make sure that we support these subgroups of students in making sure they are successful in English language arts as well as in mathematics. So here's another slide that will show you how the different tiers of language students, so we have current English learners that actually increased. So there were some very strong growth. We increased 14.3% for our current English learners, and the California Department of Education is now tracking reclassified students for 4 years. And so that data in the middle will show that our reclassified students are actually regressing, and they have declined 14.2 points. Now you can't see this granular data, because again, if you look as a holistic our English learners, they maintained 1.1 points. But again, data is important. Data will help define that pathway to see, well, exactly who were those 296 students, and of those 296 students that were RFIB that declined, how can we really target specific RTI2, that tier 1 instruction, tier 2, and let's define it to really support our students that have been reclassified and need a little extra support. And again, as you can see here, looking at the SBAC English only students, they also maintained 0.3 points, where 34.1 points that are above standard. And again, looking at the growth mindset, we want to make sure that we implement programs and services that will address the needs of all our students, not only our English learners and our low socio, but the students who are at level, and want to make sure that we track that growth using our data models and frameworks. Here is a slide on mathematics, and like I had mentioned earlier, we have groups of more groups that are performing in the red. Our English learners are homeless, socioeconomically disadvantaged students, and students with disabilities. We have our Hispanic in the orange, and we also have, at the green level, 2 or more races and our white students. And so this is a pattern that we see through the state of California, but again, we work together to make sure that we implement systems to address all of our students in making the growth needed. And again, the mathematics indicator, looking at the subgroups and individual subgroups that were in the red, we had English learners, 606 students, homeless, we have 29 students, and both of these subgroups declined, as well as our socioeconomically disadvantaged students. Looking at mathematics English learners, similar patterns, so I'm not going into too much detail here. We declined, our decline was not with our current English learners, our decline was with the reclassified students, cohort of students, who California is now providing us this data to track that 4-year growth. And again, the work really comes in engaging in the cycle of continuous improvement that I mentioned earlier, in really finding out who are those 298 students, and which of those students declined the 16.3 points. Okay, so what does this mean for us? As I mentioned, we're going to begin the LCAP stakeholder engagement meetings with all our community, and at this point we're going to share the same data, and we want the community to tell us, what do you feel? We have been implementing programs and services, and some of them, remember the peanut butter example? Some of them are working. We can see that. Our intervention specialists are working. We need more of them. We need ELD specialists at the site to help our tier 1 instruction, tier 2 instruction. We need to make sure that we align SIPSA goals to our LCAP and to our data needs, and also look at what other supports can we get with differentiated assistance? And I did want to mention one last thing. So as we start to look at programs and services, I do want to say that one research-based practice that has proven to be effective is extended day kinder. And so we will be engaging in an exploration of data across San Mateo County, California, and similar subgroups in similar districts that have an equal number of subgroups demographics to see if this research if this extended day kindergarten can support our language gaps for our English learners and our low socio beginning early on. And as Dr. Wade mentioned, the cradle to career, we want to be proactive and close that achievement gap early on, even in preschool, before we get to high school and the gap is so large that we may not have enough resources to support the students. And now Dr. Wade will talk about local, I keep on doing that, sorry about that, local data.
We're getting a little feedback, Dr. Bhatia. The data is sobering. On the heels of hearing from our passionate teachers and honoring and recognizing the hard work that they do. So I want to highlight some of the good work that some amazing teachers are doing. And this is basically, as many of our t-shirt red folks just talked about tonight, teachers are working hard and they're doing what's right by kids. So a mighty group of folks got together last year and talked about our literacy work and our challenges in serving students who potentially had very early learning signs that might put them at risk for learning how to read, which we know is a gateway skill. And this was our preliminary initial universal screen from September, which was a huge ask of all of our intervention specialists to go out and to screen all of our kindergartners, our first graders and second graders. And we got some really interesting data from our first screening. They're just completing, they're about through first grade, I think Shannon, right? About first grade. On their second screening for benchmarking students at this time in the middle of the year, and then we'll screen one more time. But the initial data suggested that our students in kindergarten were coming in at or above benchmark at about 58%. And then you can see from the, what is that called, a pie chart? Pie chart? The pie chart that we have students entering kindergarten, about 14%, I can't read it. Approaching benchmark, and about 28% below benchmark. And remember, this is a very specific test that we're giving the screener to make sure that we have a benchmark for all students when they enter. It's pretty user-friendly and it's very quick. So it used to be called Dibbles, now it's called Acadience. A company bought it and now it's called Acadience. So this is a reading diagnostic, so we can very early on identify students who may have some at-risk learning issues and address those in either Tier 1 instruction, in small group instruction in the classroom. And again, we had a very mighty organic group of general education teachers who jumped on board, got trained, and were provided materials, and they are doing that work. And I do believe we're going to see some great payoff for our students. In first grade, we saw some decrease in our students meeting benchmark at 35%, 34.7, and in second grade we had about 47% of our students. This is not cohort data, this is just kindergartners, first graders, and second graders. So this is a representative snapshot of that particular group of students, and we'll be prepared to bring the full year of data back to you in late May or early June. So we'd really like to see how our students did. And again, I can't shout out enough to the folks that are doing this work every day in the classroom, because it takes a lot to do efficacious instruction every day for those students who need it. And these are, we're hopeful that our data is going to suggest that we're making that move in the right direction. I like this graphic when we talk about multi-tiered systems of support and we look at the complex needs of our students and we look at the data. Again, I find it very sobering because I know how hard our students are working, our families and our teachers, and we really do need to break down how we're providing multiple levels of ways for students to access their learning. And part of this is about understanding what our intervention model looks like. I think this is a good one. And this is pretty much what we've been talking about for many years. Now we're calling it multi-tiered systems of support. We've called it different things in the past. One of the things that we find when we really look at what our tiered intervention looks like is that teachers need tools and they need continuous professional learning in order to make sure that those tools can be implemented in a way where students can make progress. So this is definitely something when we look at the data and we see that there are certain subgroups that aren't making progress, we want to make sure that our tiered systems of support, and like Dr. Bhatia said, we do need to intensify our levels of intervention. I heard very clearly Ms. Murray say she can't do more, she's already doing all she can do, and I think that there is only so much time in the day and some of our students need very intensive support, and so we do need to look at our intervention models and make sure that we have the materials, the professional learning, and the staffing to ensure that we can provide that intervention. Some of the implications of our data as we look at the data this year and we look at our LCAP from last year and we start having those stakeholder meetings and listening to all of the folks that contribute to how we build that LCAP and how we fund our schools and our programs and services. The LCAP is a part of that, how we look at our data and how that informs each one of our schools' single plan for student achievement, or our SIPSAs. Dr. Bhatia and her committee are working on an English language master plan, which I think will help fill some of the gaps in terms of how we are delivering that instruction and why those students continue to show achievement gaps when we are providing instruction. We need to look a little bit deeper to see what we can do in terms of curriculum instruction and making sure that that time is designated so that learning can happen. Professional learning and professional development is something that we always need to consider, and we need to listen to our stakeholders and what learning they need. We do have our Super Tuesdays, but those are very limited in terms of what we can do for a greater impact. We would love to find grant money or something where we can provide a very intensive, potentially summer learning summit, so we can look at some of these issues, dig a little deeper, and make sure that our teachers are feeling like they have the support to support the students in their classrooms. We are looking at all kinds of different ways to support alternatives to suspension. Pilarcitos and Cunha and the high school are looking at restorative practices to see if we can begin to build more restorative ways to help our students who have discipline issues to make sure that we're building community instead of pushing community away. So when students do things that maybe aren't right, they're usually just trying to send us a message, and we just need to make sure that we're listening to that message and we're reconnecting with them to our community. It never feels good to send a student out of your community or your classroom because that's the wrong message. We want to welcome our students. And so there's some very promising practices right now at Pilarcitos in terms of their circles and their restorative practices. Kudos to the staff over there. They do a really nice job of building community with that group of students. Our student study teams are meeting regularly, and those are ways where if a teacher or a parent or a principal has an issue or concern with a student, they can bring that student to that student study team and talk about what the student needs, what interventions are being provided, and then in that continuous improvement cycle, come back. How is the student doing? Is this working? Many of those student study team conversations lead to a special education referral, and our job is to always consider and to continue to question how that pipeline to special education can get broken so we can provide the intervention before we do put students into special education programs and services, because those are restrictive. We are at about 13.6% of our students in the district having IEPs, which is actually commensurate with the county. I would feel more comfortable if we were at about 10%. That's typically the number that you would look for. So you just have to drill down a little bit to see what's happening in Tier 2 to see why those numbers are so high in our special education programs. And one addition to our service support teams at all of our schools is a cost team. And those cost teams are meeting with staff members, school psychologists, therapists, principals, and talking about when a student has services, how do we make sure that we're not falling all over, providing duplication of services, and making sure that if a student doesn't have a service that they need, that those coordination of those folks, that could be COSI Clinic, it could be Star Vista, it could be lots of different folks providing services, and sometimes if a school team doesn't know that services are being provided, we sort of over-provide, but we want to make sure that we're coordinating and everybody's working together in the best interest of the student. Okay, so we have some proposals. We've been listening to Dr. McFetrich. We've been looking at the data. We've looked at our LCAP, and as we look at some of the foundational practices that may provide additional supports to our students so they can build the foundational skills that are necessary. We are looking at extended day kindergarten, making a recommendation for that in the 2021 school year. Hatchlings preschool for early childhood education, unfortunately targeted for those, what are they called? What did you call them? The portables on the chain link fence. That's where we have put a grant in through the county, hundreds of thousands of dollars to fund both infrastructure as well as staffing, as well as curriculum and training for teachers. So we are looking to build a much more comprehensive approach to our preschool program so that we integrate our Los Listos program, our special education preschool program, and bring more opportunities for students to learn together in a way that is more inclusive. So we're hopeful. We're supposed to hear at some point in January about that. Dr. Bhatia and her committee are working on the implementation of the English Learner Master Plan. Again, looking more at restorative practices so we can look at some of those suspension rates, improve literacy instruction, and that really will have so much more information by the end of this year, whether or not the efforts of our general education, K-1-2 teachers, and TK, right? Sorry. And if those improved practices through training and materials and efficacious implementation have in fact improved outcomes for our students. And we'll be making a recommendation when we have that data. And then a recommendation to continue to look through the lens of equity as we build programs and services for all students across our district. That's it. Ooh, that was a lot. And we'll be happy to take your questions. Thank you.
Holly is the special education preschool at El Granada now, I assume?
Yes, it is.
On the local data, I was just wondering if we are still doing the Fontes and Pinel as well as this Cessian, and how those compare, if there's any information on that, why that wasn't included in there, if there's been any progress from other local data. And also just kind of maybe a sense, if you all have, and if teachers have a sense of, I know that the tests have changed a lot over the last 3 or 4 years, the CAS tests, the larger scale, like are they effective, are they working, do they align with what we think we're showing up on our local data? I guess I've always had a kind of question mark about the standardized state test that people take once a year. I've always kind of questioned whether or not that's the data that we're supposed to be looking at. So I guess I just always want us to have a look at where that, because I know that we have to respond to it because it comes up in our state and our county and we get classified in certain ways. But I also think we need to have an assessment of whether or not we think that data is actually really accurate as well.
So that was a lot of questions together. No, I'm kidding. So yes, we're still doing Fontes and Pinel. One of the things that we are looking at, that certainly the dyslexia committee looked at, was Fontes and Pinel is quite time consuming. Some of the information is aligned with what they're getting from Acadians. We haven't made a decision to remove the Fontes and Pinel assessment at this time. That wasn't part of our work, but we really wanted to look at a universal screener. And I think we both agree that the CASP data is one picture of what our students do and how they're performing. We don't put all of our energy in that basket, but we are asked to address the areas of need. I think that we just gave you another snapshot of just local data, and that was the data that we showed tonight. So.
Well, and I guess this doesn't have to be answered tonight, but I guess in further presentations on this data, for me, it would be useful to, when you're looking at local data and then comparing it to the CAS data, some assessment. Is the CAS data kind of right on, or is the local data showing us something different? So that there maybe is some question of what assessments, what tests are actually showing us. And again, a check with teachers in terms of what of all of this data are they actually seeing in terms of who actually can perform in their class day to day, because they know that information the best. So I guess I'm not asking for that right now, but as you drill down into some of these numbers and try and help these populations the most, it seems to me that having a more nuanced look at the data in that way would be helpful.
And I think we do feel that the data from the CASP and the SBAC is representative. I do think that we have heard, I mean, I certainly have heard anecdotally that there's test preparation that can be done. This whole terminology, I think I'm so old, like teach to the test, right? We used to say that, right? Does anyone remember that? No? Yeah. But I don't think that that's what we're suggesting, but we are saying that students need to prepare for this. And it's a big deal. It's stressful, right? You sit for those tests, and I think we do need to think and learn a little bit about how we might prepare our students better for those assessments.
I want to say something. So actually today I definitely want to give a shout out to the ELD teachers at Cunha Intermediate because they voluntarily reached out to obtain ELD training on the task types of the LPAC. So the LPAC is one of multiple assessments in the CASP umbrella, and we can definitely keep bringing that on. And I mean, we can probably present data for 3 hours if we're given the time here to really dig deeper. And so I want to give a shout out because what Dr. Wade said about it's not teaching the test, but it is preparing our students to access the test and be exposed to the academic language. And so I do want to say that I know there have been some sites previously at Cabrillo that have given a practice test for CASP and for LPAC, but this year we are strategically going to have all of our English learners have the practice LPAC tests so that they can be exposed to the task types, as well as, and I'm sorry, high school, Half Moon Bay high school teachers too, they also have reached out to have specific ELD training on the LPAC, and we also are working with a few other sites. I know El Granada upper grade teachers has asked for some of the training as well to give strategies, specific strategies that can support our students prior for them to taking this once a year exam that again is only one slice of the pie. But we talk about equity and leading through the lens of equity. And as I mentioned today to the Cunha ELD teachers, when you take a look at parents who understand the system of public education and understand, I mean, I remember myself, I told them I was RFEP, I think I was in middle school, and I was an English learner, but even then I struggled, but in high school, I had a 4.2 GPA in high school, and I also practiced the PST. All our cohort of students practice the PSAT, and when our students are entering and taking the SAT, the PSAT, these standardized assessment, if your family knows a system and knows what assessments are important to us, they will go out of their way, and those that have a socioeconomic advantage, those students will receive that test prep. But again, I do want to give kudos to the educators at Cabrillo who are working in closing that equity gap and using our ELD instructional time and classroom to give those strategies and give that test prep for, and it's not test prep, but again, you're teaching to strategies and you're teaching academic content to close not only, again, academic gaps, but an equity gap.
Thank you. very much a part of this conversation is something I think we haven't touched on yet. And Dr. Bhatia, I understand you were acknowledged last night for some quality work you did in another school district. Would you like to, whether or not we have the data yet, but would you like to explain what that was and how it might have impacted students?
Okay, so I had the honor to join President Hines at the launch of the San Mateo County Office of Education VAPA strategic plan, and it was very inspiring. And yes, in my previous world, we definitely, again, leading through the lens of equity and seeing that, again, if we look at students who, and I'll just give an example of, let's say, summer programs. I mean, with summer, I'm already, I have 2 children of my own. I'm already looking into that summer gap, right? Where are we, what summer camps? And I saw actually an advertisement as I was driving here, the summer camp fair at Half Moon Bay. And so when you look at an equity gap, and you look at students who during the summer have a few options, right? Students that have come from families with either dual income or an income that is that can afford enriching STEAM-based STEM, science, technology, theater, art camps. These students are, a certain group of students will have access to very enriching summer opportunities. So in my previous world, we really engaged in the cycle of inquiry and the cycle of continuous improvement to look, well, what are some interventions that we can do now? What are some strategies, what are some research-based practices? And we looked at some of these gaps, and we looked at that there's a summer learning loss, and there are certain students who receive quality summer school and other students who, not because of lack of love, but because of lack of funds, can't afford certain high intense STEM opportunities. And so we were very lucky to receive a $750,000 grant to spend in 9 months. So again, we work in collaboration, and we brought the experts in the room, our teachers, our classified staff, administrators, and we created a summer STEM program where we taught STEM in the morning, and we taught visual and performing arts in the afternoon. And it was a full day. It was, I mean, I'm talking about 8 to 6 instruction. And we were acknowledged from the California Association, a School Board Association, for this program. And we really saw that when, and not only from our, I mean, we definitely saw that academic gap shrink. We saw the equity gap shrink because now our students, or even our students that were not low socio, were not EL, we had parents who said, we'll pay you to have our students in the program. We unfortunately only had a few spots. And so we went to our VAPA strategic plan, and Dr. McFetridge, under Dr. McFetridge's leadership, and President Hines and the board, we are looking, because VAPA, there is research that visual arts and performing arts and exposure to STEM and collaborative work, I mean, when you were looking at teaching language, we need to make sure our kids have those opportunities to talk, right, and to do and to learn and to really get their hands into the lessons. And so, yes, I was acknowledged for that grant and that continued support of VAPA integration into closing and making sure that we close that equity gap. And we hope that anybody who is an advocate for STEAM, for STEM and visual arts and performing arts will join a committee that will form in the spring. And next year we would definitely, with the support of Superintendent McFetridge and our board and you, President Hines, to engage in adopting a VAPA master plan or a VAPA strategic plan here at Cabrillo Unified, to really take a look at research, again, research-based practices, use data to see where where are our gaps and what can we strategically do to ensure that we give the best tools and the best supports to our students, to our teachers in the classroom, to close those gaps that we talked about using the data. I hope that I summarized, President Hines.
Thank you, you did, absolutely. And the follow-on was, it was after that summer session, I believe I understand correctly that people were so impressed with the results, funding came in to continue it.
Yeah, well, yes, the results were impressive, and the need and support of everyone, all stakeholders were there. Yes, funding followed those that implementation plan of VAPA in the summer, and actually we had, as we do intervention specialists, we had a VAPA specialist that will support teachers throughout the district in implementing the arts in the classroom, in supporting language and math.
I just want to thank you both for bringing, well thought through presentation as always. We've kind of gotten used to that. But, clearly this topic is a very complex one, and there's so many different ways to look at the data, and I know you're constantly doing that and taking that data for what it is, right? Not making too much of it, but appreciating, the insight that it does give us. And certainly I think it was the addition of those two new slides today with the 15 and 16 with comparing the standardized test results against other districts in the county, I think is extremely informative. I mean, I think that's when, for all the caveats of a data set, when theoretically, all districts are prone to those caveats of it's a test, it sucks, and people are anxious, and all that kind of stuff. There may be some differential teaching to the test, but I also, having put my way through college teaching Kaplan, I'll say there are some benefits to that, and I think you kind of alluded to that, just in terms of the state of mind, of being, the resilience and the mental presence in that. So that aside, those data were rough, and I think that's especially for the English learners and the low socioeconomic students, given how hard we know people are working already to address those groups. I think it really does, does bring forth that principle that you keep hammering over and over, is continuous improvement, and like kind of looking at what we're doing, adjusting it, and never being happy with where we are because it's red for a lot of our kids, and a lot of our kids who need it most. So I guess I don't really have a question other than to just thank you for that, and just reinforce that point of like, we need to do better than red for these kids, and it's going to be hard. It's especially because we are one of the most poorly funded districts in the county. Like, let's not forget that. $11,000 per kid does not go a long way, and you compare us to next door, $25K at Woodside, and they're not the only ones. I mean, it's egregious, right? With virtually no English learners, virtually no low socioeconomic students, we should be at their 25, we should be 35 probably. I haven't crunched the numbers, but just ballparking, right? We should be, okay, maybe 30. So I appreciate all your efforts to try to figure, and the efforts of everybody in the classroom and everybody in the district office, and parents that come in and teach art and whatever, try to help, buy supplies for our classrooms, whatever. I think it really does take all hands on deck under these circumstances for us all to really remember we all want the same thing. How we do it, we need to get better. We need to get more efficient. We need to get more effective. And the only way we're going to do that is by working together. So I appreciate the collaborative spirit that is being modeled. I think that's the way that we have to go about it. And it's like, okay, let's all roll up our sleeves and get in there and do what we need to do to serve those kids. Because for every kid that gets left behind, that's when I want to cry. That one kid that gets left behind, right? Like, we got to do our best. And I know you know that. I'm preaching to the choir, but it's just, I think for all of us, I would throw out as a call to action is we can't settle for this. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have our audit report for year ending June 30th, 2019.
President Hines, members of the board, I bring to you something that our audit report that we would typically have our auditors present this, but they had 3 other places that they needed to be, so I'm going to give it a try to present to you their slides. And talking about funding, let's just remember that we are now currently funded, the LCFF funding is at the level that we were in 2007, 2008. So we need to keep that in perspective, that our California funding is not one that it is commensurate with the needs that school districts and our children are in need right now. So with that, I would like to just bring to you what is the requirement. The state of California requires that annually the school year is presented to funding what is called a single audit, and that audit follows the standards of the government accounting office. So this is the little yellow book that they use to conduct the audit, and the highlights of the audit have to do with pensions. The auditors wanted to reflect on the fact that we, CalPERS and CalSTRS pensions, in 2013, immediately after we came back with the LCFF, we came with pensions that we would need to now pay more. And the districts are charged a lot more than they used to in their responsibilities with pensions. So in the CalSTRS, and what you saw is that basically what I want to bring to you is that the increase that has occurred since 2015 to 2019, our liabilities, our net liabilities for pensions, to that we get to from that are covered by payroll. And just looking at them, you can see the trend in percentage. Now it's galloping, and it's moving that way for our CalPERS. Similarly, for our CalSTRS, we have that same situation. So we are responsible as a district for more contributions to our CalSTRS and our CalPERS. I want to bring to you also to your attention this financial trends, and it is basically, if we read from right to left, we see that our general fund is going from a 35 to a 36,000, and the 2020 that we have in there is one that was taken on June 30th, which did not yet have that you see that we had as Measure I, which at that moment, and that we presented to our auditors, it was, as you see in change of fund balance, we have a negative 1.6 million, which is what came forward through Measure I. I also want to bring to the board, as reading from right to left, from 2017, our available reserves that have gone from 15% to 8%, and that includes what we need to keep for our reserves. So these are numbers that will give you an idea of what our financial trends are. And the very last line that takes you from what our long-term liabilities, which includes our pensions, of course, that goes, that is increasing. So you see increasing, it gives you a picture, a big picture, a 30,000 feet picture of what our auditors looked into, as they looked into our books for 2018-19. And the the general revenue, as you see, of course, comes from our property tax and some grants and which is our federal grants and contributions. That's the biggest source of our revenue, and of course you have all that in detailed in the that we have. But if we look into our expenditures, a graph of our expenditures, of course it is in instruction. It is our teachers are the highest amount that makes our budget. So this is a visual of what is contained in the audit report that you received, and that gives you 2017-18 and 2018-19 figures compared right next to one another that are pretty similar in the nature of expenditures. So at the end of the day, what our audit result give is that are we keeping spending within the parameters of what we need to spend? And the answer is yes. You see that we did not have any findings except for the last one that I'm sharing with you there at the bottom. And that is that taking our school safety plans and conducting a hearing at each and every one of our sites. So our school site councils are now working into scheduling that meeting in which we put to the public, this is what our school safety plan looks like. So that is what our auditors, this is the report, and we'll ask later to receive this and approval of the audit. Do you have any questions? Okay. Thank you.
No, I think just great job. Everything's on track with that minor thing with the safety plans. So I just want to, send a shout of appreciation out to everybody involved in every piece that was measured here.
I just think it's important that the auditors chose to show that we have increasing liabilities caused by the state and the Public Employee Pension Reform Act of 2013. It's something that we're struggling with. I know Gavin Newsom gave us some relief last year, and we're hoping that the budget this year will provide some relief, but it is one of the reasons why we have the fiscal issues we have.
Yeah, I can say I appreciate having those slides there and just having the percentages there. I'm sure I've seen it 100 times before, but it's really clearly laid out here to see, like on slide 30, I'm looking at the packet, like 36, like just see CalPERS and CalSTRS, like how much that percentage has increased from, I guess from CalPERS.
15 to 19.
Yeah, 15 to 19, like in 5 years, it almost doubled. And CalSTRS 15 to 19 went up 30% or so. So that's pretty tremendous, given that I presume the benefits haven't changed.
Well, there's that, but there's also, and just in deference to the educators who've remained in the room, this has also been something that has hurt teachers, hurt employees, whether they're state teachers retirement system or public employee retirement system. Yes, this has increased the costs for the district, but it's also taken a toll on our educators because they've continued to have to pay more and more, which is why anytime you pass a raise since 2013, it feels like not a raise because they're getting more taken out of their paycheck for their own pensions. And it's what California did to us as of 2013. And we were able to go on Saturday to talk to legislators and name that as a major concern. Member McCammon and Member Hines and I, and talked to Assembly Member Mullins, Assembly Member Berman, and to State Senator Jerry Hill, and speak to new candidates also for Mr. Hill's replacement. this is the thing that we need relief from. Gavin Newsom gave us some relief last year. We hope we'll have some relief this year, but this is why everybody's in silent recession, and this is why we have so many impassioned people advocating for more money, because it's harder and harder for us all.
Thank you. Next up are our communications. Why don't we start to the right, Sophia?
I said a lot of what was on my mind when Dr. Bhatti and Dr. Wade spoke about the results, and just I think equity, especially in this cost-constrained environment, remains really important to me, and I think we need to have more conversations about what equity means, and just make sure we're aligned on that definition and how we're going to get there. I think just that simple, conversation I think will be helpful in terms of getting that alignment and knowing where we're going, so we know which direction to go to get there. I can make a quote from CSBA President Emma Turner from something recent that she had written for one of the newsletters. Top of mind for every board should be making equity-driven decisions that take into account opportunity gaps that often begin before students even enter the public school system. Often students of color and low-income students have more limited access opportunities that can ensure they graduate from high school ready for college, career, and life success. And I think anyone can imagine you're going to come into school with some intrinsic difficulties when you're an English learner. Your family may not be in the same boat. You're a low socioeconomic status. Like certainly, having privileges of neither of those at this point. Although I was also an English learner when I was growing up, it didn't call it that at that time. I can appreciate and working closely with families that don't have those privileges, the life differences that happen when you can afford to have your student do their science fair project at home on their laptop, as opposed to, I don't even know how you do it, go to the library, I guess. Like, life is just so different when you have these circumstances, and I think we always need to just be mindful that we not only don't perpetuate structural inequities that exist in our system, but that we also break them down and reverse them. Because it's those subtle things that make a big difference that I've seen working with families and working with kids. Not being myself in those shoes, I can only do that. That's my best proxy. And talking with leaders at Boone Ridge and Dr. Arriaga and others, to just put myself in those shoes as much as possible, and just questioning everything that we do and making sure that we're not only not perpetuating, but also breaking down and reversing the systems that have been set up over the last, frankly, 100 years in doing that. I also want to say a special thank you to Dr. Arriaga for voicing up. I know she couldn't be here tonight, but Patty Ramirez has spoken to her, the request that that all students be welcome, regardless of what school they go to, what their choice is, wherever they go, that we need to just have that welcoming environment. I think to me that's a theme that I've had in mind throughout all the conversations over the past several months in terms of what do we cut, what do we not cut. I think to me an important thing that isn't perhaps always apparent to everybody at all points in time is when something gets cut from the district's budget, it doesn't necessarily mean that the student won't be supported in that way. So Cunha Athletics, for instance, I think it was even the paper last week, there's a big push in months of negotiations that are continuing ongoing to work with external partners, to make sure that we can support those programs. Around science specialists, same conversations are happening, right? We're really, really fortunate to live in a county and in a community where we have a lot of revenue challenges, and we have a lot of many families with family income challenges, but there's money out there in the Bay Area. And I think, I appreciate all the really hard work that Dr. McFetridge and others are undertaking to figure out, and even with Dr. Arriaga and Holly and Leticia, working with her to figure out where can we get grants for the stuff that we want to do, right? We got to get creative and we got to figure it out. And I would encourage our community, hang in there. If you see a problem, let's approach it as not like, of course we have that initial emotional response of like, I'm upset, this is going away, but I would challenge it, right? So there's conversations about Moon Ridge, and I just spoke with Norma the other day about like, and I hear leadership there is like interested to pursue, well, so what can we do, right? So if we can't do buses for the district, like what else can we do? How do we get kids there safely, right? How can we leverage resources through the city or through the county and figure out, the point is, how do we get kids from point A to point B? How might change. It might not necessarily be a district paying for a bus driver the way it has been for a long time. Let's look at the problem and maybe we evolve how we're gonna solve it. So those are the kind of the high level themes that I've continued to have through all of these conversations of budget and academics and instruction that I hope we can bear in mind, especially over the next several months as we implement some big changes so we can be more efficient and effective in how we serve our kids. That's all for me. Oh, and science fair was really cool last night.
Along those lines, just a little more on what you already said, I just want to acknowledge the work that's to come for the teachers and the administration, because we made the cuts, but now the hard work begins of implementing those cuts. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. We know you guys are working hard and trying to find alternate ways to doing it, but it's just the beginning. Now we've made the decisions, but now we've got to implement. I also just wanted to talk again just to support the full and fair funding and the activity that's going on in our community at the state level to try to work with full and fair funding. So I also want to acknowledge that. I think that's especially important in these times, as they were saying earlier, we're now funded at 2007-2008 levels. So I think that's super important for us to do, and thank you for going and talking to our elected officials. I think it's super important. And then just the last quick thing I wanted to say was, I just want to make sure the public knows that I personally, and I assume the rest of the board, are always up to hearing from people or being approached or being emailed or meeting. I know it's hard sometimes to be able to communicate at these meetings just because of how they're set up, but I just want people to know that I'm always happy to talk, and I hear things come up and I think, oh, I want to say this, or oh, I want to hear what they have to say about that, or and that sometimes makes it difficult. So I just want everyone to know that I'm always open to meeting with people or hearing from you, and I appreciate all of you coming and hearing what you have to say.
I don't really have much to say. I do want to thank everybody who stayed till the end. I think it's not only important to have a voice, but also just to stay and hear everything that has to be presented, because a lot of the times the fun stuff like the budget that I still don't understand completely is towards the end, and sometimes it's hard, but we do need to see the numbers and get an idea. I don't think it's anybody's fault. I think doing the budget cuts and having to decide where to cut, and I mean it's all related to the kids, but the whole thing was like cut whatever doesn't impact them, and I think everything impacts them. So it was really, really hard. But I agree with Mary Beth that the hard work is to come to implement those cuts and to see what the impacts are, because we could sit here and say, well, I think this is going to happen or this might happen. I mean, it's more of a waiting kind of to see what the results are. And I think I also want to acknowledge all the teachers and all the hard work that they do, and I really just appreciate you being here and staying just to hear all the information. I sometimes, like some of the political stuff, I'm still like, learning a lot of all this political things that, because this is actually, I didn't realize how political this position is. I just wanted to help, and I was a concerned parent, and I'm socially, economically, in that category. I'm struggling financially. My daughter's an English language learner. She's regressing. So I have a different perspective, but I always appreciate everybody and everybody's input. And I just want to thank everybody. I haven't really done any meetings with anybody. I'm really just trying to get my daughter to reading level. So that's very time consuming. But thank you everybody for being here and all the great work that you guys do. Appreciate it.
Hi, Happy New Year, everyone. I want to thank all of the teachers for coming and say, just on my behalf at least, I want to give you a raise. I want to give you a huge raise. I do. And I don't want to say then but or something else. But unfortunately, we also have this financial constraint, and we have the county, and we have the fact that we are not funded enough by the state. And it's not just that the state funding levels are now back to our 2007, 2008 level, and our fixed costs have risen, our health and welfare costs, our pension costs, as you saw, which was the state's way of solving their pension problems, have been passed on to us. But we, in particular, Cabrillo Unified, in our county, in our region, are funded significantly lower, as was referenced by Sophia earlier. We are a revenue limit district. We do not bring in enough property taxes to raise up to the state minimum level, so we get the state minimum level. Most of our districts surrounding us get way more than that in the local property taxes, and they get to keep it. And so that's why we advocate for AB 39 and full and fair funding. And we will continue to push the state. And I guess I want to say to the teachers and to all the folks who came and parents, I want to bottle your energy, and I want us all to take that to the state and to the legislatures, because I feel like really together we're having this fight, and it makes me so sad when it becomes us versus them in a feeling. And so I just want you to know that I at least am with you, as well as in this fight with the state, to try and get as much as we can this year, next year, following year, whatever we can do to make our educational system equitable, because it causes a tremendous amount of stress. I know I feel stressed when we have to make cuts, when we have to implement them, when we're talking about equity issues and we don't have the resources to really address them. I know it makes all of you stressed, and I know that it makes the children stressed, and that is not a fair thing. So you get these state legislatures and they talk about mental health issues, and it's like, just fund us enough, and we're going to significantly reduce our mental health issues. So I am continuing, as Sean mentioned, we attended a CSBA education forum on Saturday and advocating for AB 39 full and fair funding, also sending out invitations to meet with individual legislators to push for things that might particularly help our district. So we've got some ideas on legislation, other things in case AB 39, and kind of raising that lower state bar doesn't work. So we are working strong for that. I want to do a plug. I just today endorsed Shanley Mazer for the Senate seat. She has served on a school board as well as a city council member for Redwood City. She is very, very actively involved in education and forming coalitions on a statewide level. She understands these issues of equity and full and fair funding, and will be a brilliant advocate for us in the state if we vote her in. So I just wanted to make that plea to my board members as well as to our community. And yeah, if anybody wants to talk about what we can do to try and influence the state, I would love to do that. And please know that I do hope that this year there will be a raise and that we can work together. So I hope that you feel that at least we've heard that, and it is still in process, but I think that, at least for me, the intention is there. So, and then I just want to put another plug in. We are going to be going to an environmental conference on school education, and again, hopefully at the next board meeting can have a formal adoption of the environmental committee. I know that didn't get done for this time. Thank you.
I want to echo the sentiment of appreciation for our teachers. I do believe that there is a disconnect between what I heard tonight from teachers and what I have heard from Dr. McFetridge and the other board members. Please know that on my part, I absolutely want to honor negotiating a raise, and we have to look at, we're still in that process of interpreting what that income is from the state, what our cuts are going to be in reality, and my understanding, this was just my understanding, and I know that Dr. McFetridge can give us more information, was that March, after that second interim, is when we have a much better idea of how everything is going to balance out. So my ask would be that on all sides, that we assume noble intent. because I sincerely believe that we're working in the same direction. So that's my ask. I was really excited to go to the kickoff for Visual and Performing Arts, to know that the County of San Mateo is wanting to put some systematic planning for something that's sustainable. And to that effect, there are creativity residencies. These are available to any teacher, K through 12. You don't have to be a VAPA teacher, but they're doing a creativity residency. I know that substitute teachers will be made available and a $500 stipend. I don't know how this has been advertised. I don't know. I'm looking over at Dr. Bhatia to know if this URL can be sent out to either principals or teachers. It's going to fill up fast. There's only 25 slots, but I think it could be really exciting for people that are interested in that long-term sense of equity for all of our students. One of the pieces related to cuts and to raises is, that I think it's hard for me as a board member to hear, is we had a list of was $2.6 million in cuts. I did hear clearly when that was presented in December, and I'm aware that Dr. McFetridge is working behind the scenes with other community organizations to offset in a number of places, and that takes time. And so I think the board is also hopeful that some of what could appear to be a severe cut in a particular area, that we'll see some offsets in a way that are not as disruptive as it might be. That said, we know that we don't necessarily have the luxury of giving a raise that every single teacher is worthy of. What would be helpful is to know from our educators, where we have this whole system and we want to lay the foundation for all of our students and equity, if we have to make cuts or if we have to make adjustments, what would your recommendations be for where we should make those adjustments? It just kind of, it feels like a hairball in my throat, because I don't know, you know, all of our conversations are open. With the Brown Act, it's hard for us as a group to hear and have a sidebar conversation with all of you. We're constrained. So I appreciate any group of parents, of teachers that approach me and I can try to make time for, and I do. I want to hear your recommendations. I want to hear the pieces of the story that I might not have heard otherwise. And that's a sincere ask. The reality is, we know we're going to have to make, you know, that we have the recommended cuts on the table. If there's something that you're adamant we can't cut that, but then where else do we look to make that cut? Because we do have finite resources. So I would really like to hear from our teachers and educators what those recommendations or how we can be creative in meeting the needs of all of our students in the district. So, and knowing what the impacts of potential changes are. Thank you, Dr. McFetridge.
So,
Oh, student board member, I'm sorry.
Sorry, my apologies. Sorry, Lauren.
All right, Happy New Year, everybody. I can't believe it's already 2020. So these are the reports that I received for this month, and I just wanted to say thank you again to everyone for taking the time out of your full schedules to send these over, so we can kind of create that transparency with all the hard work going on in the district office to what's happening on the school sites. So to get started, the past few months have been pretty exciting at Fair and Longview. To start, there are a few new faces on campus. Miss McVicker, who became the interim principal back in November, is now officially the principal of Farallon View. Students, staff, and parents have been so kind in welcoming her to the Farallon View family. Anamika Baker, who is the mother of a first grade student here at Farallon View, is now our school librarian. She's been hard at work reorganizing the library and reading incredible books to students. We also have a new music/performing arts teacher, Ms. Tholock. She has been quite busy already in her role as director of our third grade Shakespeare program and is thrilled to take on other grades as well. As far as fun events at Farallon View, the PTO hosted the 40th annual Holiday Bazaar on December 10th. We start the holiday season off right with holiday shopping, student performances, crafts, games, in addition to delicious food and treats such as tamales, hot cocoa, and homemade cookies. Our literature club garage sale on January 11th allowed us to raise a good amount of money for so many enrichment programs here at Farallon View. We are very excited to continue learning and growing in this new calendar year. Kings Mountain Elementary School held its spelling bee on January 20th, and they had the same winner for 2 years. Shell Cleve hosted a Sea Hugger Assembly on January 15th. Kings Mountain Elementary School had a school-wide beach cleanup at Pomponio Beach on December 9th, and the 4-5 class is creating a movie to answer their driving question, why are oceans important? The K1 class is presenting that movie and their how to do a beach cleanup writing pieces to the TK/kindergarten classrooms at Farallon View to answer their driving question, how do you take care of our environment and inspire others to do so? Kings Mountain announced TK enrollment for the 2021 school year. During the Great Kindness Challenge, Kings Mountain Elementary School will create Valentines for veterans and participate in the Pennies for Patients program. Finally, students are learning more about people with hearing loss during our Changing Perspectives studies. Hatch will be hosting the first kindergarten immersion meeting on January 23rd at 6:30 p.m. This is a series of 3 meetings. Parents interested in the immersion program will have to attend at least one of the 3 meetings offered. At the meeting, parents will get information about how the immersion program works, the research behind it, including the fact that it prevents Alzheimer's, and the benefits of being bilingual and biliterate nowadays, and better prepare our students for the 21st century workforce. Friday, January 24th was movie night. PTO and ELAC parents will be hosting this fun event at Hatch Elementary. Join us for a fun night with treats, hot chocolate, and pan dulce. Don't forget your blanket. Hatch Leadership Students Club is launching the Kindness Campaign alongside with our new Buddy Bench program. Students at Hatch will have the opportunity to show their kindness by writing kind notes to other classmates. The notes will be shared at the morning announcements. This is the 3rd year that we are on board with this amazing project, and it makes a huge positive impact on our students and the school climate. Thank you to our leadership parent volunteers, Mrs. Meehan, Mrs. Izzarelli, and Mrs. Willems. Just before winter break, El Granada's library hosted a Wake Up and Read event. Parents and students came to the library to read good books with each other. This coincided with Pajama Day, so it was an extra special, cozy way to share a book with family and friends. Free books were available for students to take home. This event was a great success and a super way to start the school day. El Granada students are getting out of the classroom and going on some great field trips to the San Mateo Historical Association, the Santa Cruz Mission, the Santa Clara Intel Museum, and the Oakland Museum of California. Yesterday, Ms. Ladd hosted a tea and talk. Topics included the school budget and the importance of school attendance. On January 24th, our kinder classes will be hosting their first kinder tour of the year, starting at 8:30. And on January 31st, our school will be celebrating swimming at El Granada with a bubble gum bubble dance party. Swimming means being safe, working hard, being inclusive, and making good choices. Go Dolphins. Cunha jumped right into it when we came back from break with a big change to our lunch procedure. Beginning the day we returned, 6th graders now eat in the MU, 7th graders in the section by the basketball courts, and 8th graders by the gym. Our custodians worked hard to build and rearrange tables, and our teachers have been helping supervise this transition. For the first 15 minutes, all students are expected to sit and eat in their area, And then when the second bell rings, they are released by table to throw away their trash and go out to the field and basketball courts. We have already seen a great improvement in the cleanliness of the area, and students are now leaving the lunch tables and going out to play ball rather than hanging out. We also just completed our amazing science fair. Wednesday night, our 8th graders presented the results of their projects, detailing fascinating hypotheses, experiments and observations, data, and conclusions. Half Moon Bay High School got right back to work after the enjoyable winter break. We celebrate making it halfway through the school year with a winter assembly put together by our leadership class on January 29th, where both students and staff participate in friendly competitions and other events. The winter formal at the Ted Adcock Center will take place on February 1st, and I hope Mr. Nazar and Mr. Boysen have their dance moves ready. With prom coming up, community members on the coast side want to help high school students with the high cost of this fun experience by creating this wonderful event called Say Yes to a Prom Dress. Our high school students are invited to donate formal dresses that they're done wearing to this event for someone else to use and love this year. At their giveaway events, they offer a variety of jewelry, designer prom dresses, shoes, and handbags that people can take home for the cost of $0. The annual blood drive is at the end of the month, January 31st. Last year, we had an impressive turnout and received about 30 donations, and each one of those donations can save up to 3 lives. We hope to break that record this year. And finally, the updates for La Costa Adult School for the spring semester. New offerings include 2 sections of CTE Modern Office Skills and Technology, which take place on Mondays from 6 to 9 p.m. and Wednesdays from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. 2 sections of Spanish. The Level 1 will gather on Tuesdays from 6 to 8:30 p.m. and Level 2 on Wednesdays from 6 to 8:30 p.m. 6 levels of ESL Monday through Thursday, both in the morning and evening. High school equivalency preparation 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday evenings. Finally, we are working to pilot a family engagement workshop to be held at Hatch Elementary starting at the end of the month, Friday mornings from 8 to 9:30 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Okay, now I can go. So, it's honestly difficult to hear what I think is pain and stress from teachers and community members that came out tonight. And if Sean Reardon were still here, and I respect people if they need to go, but he and I have talked before, we all have roles to play. And albeit mine is not always a popular role to play, my role must be to balance and align the interests of different groups, and those include students. We've heard tonight a report that shows that we have more work to do, particularly for our English language learners and for socioeconomically disadvantaged students. My role has to be to also advocate for the rights of families. And we heard issues today that describe that, particularly around the issue of where students go to school. To balance the role in the community, to balance the role of the employees. And I need to honestly, I think, advocate for all these people. And it is true, in the last meeting, I did say we would need to make it right. But I also have a fiduciary responsibility to make the district whole. And that's tough. It's not the role that I like to play, honestly. We've been dealt a tough set of cards. When I came into the district, I was informed that it would be a certain amount of money that we would need to cut. And in August, September, we had unaudited actuals, and that number crept up, and then we had a letter of lack of going concern from the County Office of Education saying we would have to cut $2.6 million. And those cuts are not anything that I want to do or want to recommend. But I know I have a responsibility to this board, to this community, and even to the teachers and the families of the district to make sure that we are fiscally healthy and fiscally solvent. And that requires some difficult decisions. We have a lot of work to do in the district yet. We need to do better by our English language learners. We need to do better by students who are socioeconomically disadvantaged. And we need to also do better by our teachers and by all our staff. We need to work at addressing our need for increased compensation for employees. I am not in the habit, and it is not customary for a superintendent to talk about negotiations because we would always be accused of negotiating in public. That's a thing. It's a thing in my sector. It's a thing in my business. It's a thing in our work lives. We are not at liberty to talk about negotiations, but there are some things that I can share. I shared that we were required to make a $2.6 million cut. The letter of lack of going concern evidenced that, and that letter went to the Fiscal Crisis Management Assistance Team that went and then visited us, and it went to State Superintendent of Instruction Tony Thurmond. And that CC block meant to signal that this is serious business and we could be taken over. I had to bring a demographer's report showing declining enrollment because that will mean less money in the district over time. We had to bring a resolution in December basically authorizing me and staff to implement the $2.6 million of cuts. And it's just like when the parcel tax passed, we knew that that night was great and we all celebrated, and the next day we woke up and said, oh great, we still have to make all these cuts. It's not 3.8, but it's, or 4.1, but it's 2.6. So I also described over the past few months, over and over again, that you would experience a certain whiplash when the governor proposed a budget. When we met in negotiations, that budget had not been proposed. We still do not have that information. The information that I've heard today from colleagues who went to School Services of California, which we did not send people because it's too expensive, so we chose a training that's going to be free to us, but somebody sent me a slide. And while the COLA, the cost of living adjustment, had been 1.79%, Governor Newsom said it would be 2.29%. This is a moving target until May. But Governor Newsom said 2.29, and so I did the translation, and it winds up being about $700,000 for our district. That's our initial estimate from School Services California, if I do my math correctly. That doesn't take away $2.6 million in cuts. And it doesn't cover increasing pension costs, increasing costs of doing business, and employee compensation. So I will say that what I did say at negotiations, and what we did say in negotiations, was that we looked forward to returning to the table in March once we know the budget picture. That's honest. And the truth of the matter is that the second interim is required by the state by March 17th. I believe that's St. Patrick's Day. I'm not one for putting religion in the school, but I think that's a green leprechaun and some clover, so I'll feel more comfortable about it. So I think the state requires that March 17th, and we have a board meeting the week before that. And then we decided to bring back negotiations in late March, and that was a mutual agreement with the bargaining teams. So I will say that I look forward to returning to the table in March so that we have a more accurate financial picture and we can look at what we can do. That's what we said, that we would return to the table. What I said in December is exactly what our colleague and parent in the audience said, which is we know we need to do more and we know we need to make it right. But federal funding is not enough, state funding is not enough, and your local parcel tax is a renewal tax. And you saw me stand up in December to show you an audit of that parcel tax to show you that it's all going to basically employee salaries. And it's no more money. So I haven't rehearsed this with the board, but I was also, because I got a call over winter break from Clay Lambert of the Half Moon Bay Review, because union negotiators reached out to him. And he said, Sean, it's not often that we get talk about negotiations in the paper. This is going to be a public concern, and I will need to say my piece. And so I told Clay There are increasing costs, and we don't know the budget picture. We're starting to get a little bit of it, but remember, it'll change till May. So I think it's important for everybody to know, and it's what I think I said in the Half Moon Bay review last week, was we don't have enough funding, and if we really as a community are committed to paying our employees more and not having this level of cuts, quite frankly, if it's not going to come from the feds and it's not going to come from the state, you're going to need more local funding. And I did this before and I'll do it again. At some point, this community is going to need a more progressive, larger parcel tax to be able to fix the problem. And people are not going to have the stomach for doing it right now. But people should be talking about it. And I've talked about it in every PTO meeting that I've gone and talked to. We heard a lot tonight about Hatch, and you heard from Moonridge families and some representatives from Moonridge families who appreciate the option to be able to go to their neighborhood school. If there are transportation issues there, we will look at additional resources. If there are increased issues for interventions that are required, we will look at additional resources. But again, I'll go on record that I think it is difficult for me to accept that we would bus students from the furthest, most southern point of the district to the school most north in the district, where they have to spend 30 to 45 minutes on a bus each way, and that data doesn't show great things either. And again, we heard from those people. We went to Moonridge, we polled them, and back to the place about Main Street, because that got mentioned, we have plans to go poll them also. And just to be real about this and to give you some data, we looked at the numbers. It's maybe 15 or 20 students. Samtrans has always worked with us to adjust their schedules. So when I hear from Brianna that Samtrans' current schedule doesn't seem to work out, we will be talking with Samtrans. And I just want to honor Brianna because she did email me today with some questions, and she had some questions for me in the winter and in December, and we met, and I look forward to meeting with you. I don't have all the answers right now, but I do mean to make it right. I do mean to make good on this, but I hope everybody understands we have limitations, and we have $2.6 million of cuts still to make. There were questions about Hatch renovation. Those new buildings will be completed in summer. And it is true that we have an opportunity potentially to have a grant for increased preschool learning. And it is true that we may keep those portables there because they're in good shape, because we believe in preschool and we believe in early childhood education. And it is true that what my colleague said is true. As a Big Lift district, if we don't have extended day kindergarten, we are losing opportunities for students to learn and play and work and talk and have school. And research shows that those things, I think even our local data shows that that's an issue. And so that's something that we will be talking about. I do want to say too, El Granada and Fairlawn View, I came into the district and the first schools that I stopped by, because they're on my way to the district, were Fairlawn View and El Granada. Those schools are in terrible shape. I've said over and over again in board meetings that that has to be our first priority, and our facilities master plan revisioning has already included faculty, and on the 28th and 30th, on Tuesday and Thursday, from 6 to 7:30 or 6 to 8:30, I'm not sure what it is, we will be meeting with community members, and I've also asked Mid-Coast Council representatives to attend and Don Horsley to attend or to send a representative. We mean to envision better schools and begin building that process, but we had to get a facilities master plan ready, and we had to, we still have work to do to plan that school and bring those plans to the board. You heard from Ramon Macias tonight, and I spoke at Cunha staff meeting yesterday, and I don't think I was necessarily a very popular man there yesterday either. Cunha heat has been an issue for us. It was an issue before the break We thought we'd fix the boilers, and then we had problems with distribution and the controls. This week, we were able to get some space heaters over there in the interim because it was so cold. And then we were able to get a vendor to finally figure out the controls, and we still have 2 classrooms to fix over there. We still have technology issues, but I will say too that we've been without a director of technology for the last month, and we interviewed for a director of technology today. You already heard me about my parcel tax, and I heard people say fair contract now. I just want to close by saying, I have to have a thick skin. I'm not giving up. I will meet anyone when they request me to meet with them. When Cooney requested it, when James Barnes, thank you James, requested me to come yesterday, I came. There were some things that I heard and we have some disagreements. There are certainly a variety of opinions, but I do want to hear from people. I do look forward to continuing to come to staff meetings. And I do want a fair contract too. I hope people will understand that what we communicated clearly to our partners, and I understand they have roles to play too, but I do want to make sure that everybody understands that we look forward to going back at the end of March when we have a clearer budget picture so we know what we can do for our teachers and for all our employees. Thank you very much.
We're coming up on 10 o'clock. Can I have a motion to go past 10 o'clock?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Yes, Sophia and Fran. Motion passes 5+1. We come now to consent items. Do I have a motion for approving our consent items? Do I have a second? I'll second. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes 5+1. That brings us to our action items.
The first one I think is important, especially considering that we celebrate Martin Luther King Day this month. This is African American History Month, and I will read the proclamation. Whereas each year during the month of February, the citizens of the United States celebrate African American History Month and the actions, words, and achievements of so many African Americans who have contributed to the success and prosperity of the United States. And whereas African Americans have enriched our society through their commitment to promoting fairness, equality, and justice for all, and whereas August 2019 marked 400 years since the first arrival of Africans to present-day America, and the United States Congress established the 400 Years of African American History Commission to commemorate the historic heritage and active contributions that Americans of African descent have made to help shape the cultural, academic, social, economic, and moral attributes of this nation. And whereas, in spite of the African slave trade that created an institution of white supremacy in this nation, Africans and African Americans have nonetheless continued to persevere and move forward in society, fighting for their freedom and also for the freedom of all Americans over time. And whereas in 2008, the first African American president of the United States was elected, and whereas in 2012, President Barack H. Obama was selected to serve a second term, and whereas in 2012, California historically elected the most African Americans to serve in the legislature, totaling 12 members, and whereas 2018 marked the highest number of African American members serving in the United States Congress, totaling 55 members, and whereas Africans and African Americans have been great inventors, inventing and improving on innovations such as the air conditioning unit, almanac, automatic gear shift, blood plasma bag, clothes dryer, doorknob, door stop, electric lamp bulb, elevator, fire escape ladder, fountain pen, gas mask, golf tee, horseshoe, lantern, lawnmower, lawn sprinkler, lock, lubricating cup, refrigerating apparatus, spark plug, stethoscope, telephone transmitter, thermostat control, traffic signal, and typewriter. And whereas African American History Month commemorates and celebrates the many different achievements of African Americans, whether that be in academic pursuits, business, fine arts, political action, and science, Now therefore be it resolved by the governing board of the Cabrillo Unified School District that the district takes great pleasure in recognizing February 2020 as African American History Month, urges all coast-side citizens to join in celebrating the accomplishments of African Americans during African American History Month, and encourages the staff and students of CUSD to recognize not only the many different talents of African Americans, but also the great achievements, contributions, and sacrifices they have made to create equity and equality for all. And we recommend approval by the board. We've made great progress. We have great strides yet in front.
Thank you, Dr. McFedridge. Do I have a motion to approve this adoption of proclamation? Do I have a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. What's that? Okay, roll call. Aye. 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 Motion passes 5+1. Next up, approval of proposed digital art and design course adoption.
So we have our high school representatives. As you know, this is the first year that we formed the Curriculum Advisory Council. And part of this council, not only are we taking a look at approval of curriculum itself, but also when we're adding additional courses, we want to make sure that, like we said earlier, the people and our amazing teachers that are teaching these important content areas are part of this decision making, and along with the administrators at the site, that we, like our Alice in Wonderland, we take a look at the destination and not just approve a one-off course, but are really strategically looking at research and the long-term, where is our end goal and pathways. So here we do have Mr. Boyson, thank you for being here, who's going to talk to us a little bit about a couple of courses tonight.
Okay, great, thank you very much. I'm so pleased to be here with my colleague Nina Anderson from the art department. And so we have two things. Also working with Sarah Bunkin, a freshman studies teacher at our high school as well. Nina really is the author of the memo, and so she'll go ahead and go into a little bit more of the details of the course. But just to give you a larger view of what the art department wants to achieve here. Like other departments, they're always looking, again, at the idea of continuous improvement and evolution and revision, and so they do want to make a change to their pathway, and this is the change that they would like to make. There are also, the pathway used to be more linear in a way. Art Spectrum would be sort of the starting spot, and there would be 3 tracks, and the art department wants to go ahead and make it a bit more flexible so students can cross over to different art classes. And so really the thrust of all this is that animation used to be the next step in one of the pathways in web design, and animation, that class was created some time ago from a faculty member who has long since stopped working at Half Moon Bay High School. It was anchored to a desktop computer with software, which is obsolete, and those very towers don't even exist at the school anymore. And so this is an effort to reconnect again with the digital format for artists, of course respecting the traditional formats of artistic fine art expression and connecting to the VAPA standards, but to bring it to the 21st century, and to meet again our LCAP goals of 1 and 2. But to go into more details of the course itself, Ms. Anderson can speak more directly to that. Yes.
Yes, I believe it's important to have like a new digital pathway in our course, because in California this is actually one of the jobs you can take. 1 out of 10 get a job in the creative industry, and that goes from architecture to being in the entertainment industry or printing or publishing, and also fashion, and lots of jobs connected, especially in California. So we believe this is a major pathway that should be recognized, and yeah, so I'm for the more digital art courses, and it will be connecting to our main entry course, the Art Spectrum, and we started doing a little bit of digital designs. I'll show an example in a little bit. So next up, yeah. Also with the budget cuts, I think this will have a big impact, but at low cost, because we are going to use the platform we already have. We're using the Chromebooks and using online programs, so it won't cost any extra. We did get a grant from the Cabrillo Education Foundation to buy some equipment. So we got a 3D scanner, so we can scan people and we can make a model and manipulate it. So it'll be really interesting. And I think the big impact with the students is learning basic stuff like layering, photo editing, and how they can print it and publish it also. So I'm not putting it down to programs, I'm making it more wide and open because these things keep changing. So yeah, the last one is an example. We can't really see the model here because I had it on my computer. But they already started using this program, SketchUp, where they can do an animation and build these buildings in Art Spectrum. So that's our first step, and to get them introduced into these platforms, and they can choose it next year, hopefully. Yeah. So that's any questions for details about it, you can read the longer memo.
For the details there, I do want to advocate again for the course. I believe it's a step forward in terms of evolution of art and in terms of digital expression. And again, I think it aligns with our LCAP. And in terms number one, career college readiness, engagement, it has a real life connection to professional and commercial applications. And so we believe it's something that will be A through G approved without much work at all. And so is there something else you wish to show?
No, I'm just happy to hear about the visual and performing arts and doing to think about students can do this at all levels.
I'll be emailing you to be part of that committee.
Okay. So any further questions on the digital art design class?
I'm just going to make a comment.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I'm just going to make a comment. I think this is like really a great example of what Leticia talked about earlier in terms of kind of figuring out where you want to go and then just pointing yourself in that direction and taking that pathway forward. You know, to come up with a course in the arts realm that's not only culturally relevant to students, but also gives them the career potential and the tools that they you know could use like hands-on in jobs. I think is tremendous. So I just want to I don't have questions. I just want to appreciate the direction, kind of that vision and that direction that you're taking with this.
Great. Thank you.
I just want to say I had to sign off on your CEF grant earlier in the year, and so to see this come to fruition, I think is awesome that you're doing this because it is a very important pathway and a very important skills for our students. So thank you very much.
All right, next up, please. Oh, do you? Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
Do I have a motion to approve?
I just have a quick question. This is an elective, a new elective for the high school students.
Yeah, so they repurpose on the there was an art class that was created many moons ago, and so we are modernizing that new section. So it's new but not new because basically we're eliminating we're repurposing the description and adding like the information that we received last night, the visual arts and performing arts and the STEAM component to this course, while also making sure that we're seeing that pathway, because we definitely had conversation on ensuring there, not for tonight, but there's this whole world of career technical education, and it's important for us as a school district to look at courses strategically so that our students can receive that credit in having completed a career technical ed pathway, because they receive certification and credits for college.
There is the potentiality for that down the road, for it to be part of a SET pathway. It does fit, but right now we're just trying to get update and get a foundation moving toward that into the years to come.
So it's a new course, but modernized course. It's a modernized COVID course, basically.
And it's eligible for any student that would like to, or it.
Art Spectrum is a prerequisite. That's usually the
Okay.
freshman entry level to the pathway. And then following that, people can choose to take Art 2, take this new course if they wish to. And I believe there's one other flow, which is the early college art, Art 401 and Art 440, which is part of the dual enrollment through College of San Mateo.
So we had a motion. Do we have a second? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes 5+1.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so Ms. Bunkin's here. Ms. Bunkin is working this year with us at Half Moon Bay High School as a freshman studies teacher. However, she has worked as our VITSA coordinator in the district for some time. And so we're here to promote the next course that we have here, which is the positive psychology course. And this is something which has a couple of fronts on it. The whole approach to social emotional learning is something that we've really embraced with our Health and Wellness Committee and through PBIS in the years prior. And although the funding for PBIS has been difficult to come by recently, it's something that we have not given up and that we do want to continue to pursue at the secondary level. And so coming out of this, Ms. Bunkin approached Mr. Nazar with this idea. And she did some research, really kind of laid out its applicability to A through G approval, and really embracing the idea of the whole child and not just the academic components to education, and really built out, I think, a fine course. And so, again, these are things that, just some things to give you upfront information about. Our goal here is to find funding through third-party sources. We do know that what our situation is here in the district, and so that's just to be upfront that the course is to be approved, and to fund that course we will be looking for outside sources to go ahead and do that. And so again, we're motivated by social emotional learning, and there's some linked learning components that Ms. Bunkin has worked into the memo and the course description, but I'll go ahead and let her speak to more detailed aspects of that course.
So can I also add, because again, as we're looking at pathways, I do want to say that a psychology course at the high school is also part of the education pathway to potentially in the future build that foundation to begin to recruit future teachers among our own students. And so this is definitely a first step into potential multiple other pathways for career tech ed.
There's child development and education aspects of that whole career tech ed pathway, which we would find a fit that way in years to come. Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Bunkin. I'm passionate about public education and about children. I used to teach at Woodside High School for about 10 years, and for the past 6 years I've been working with all the new teachers here at the high school and at Cunha through the VITSA induction program. I also have 3 children in the district and have served on every committee, and am thrilled to be back in the classroom. It's such a treat for me. How many of you have heard of positive psychology? Okay. So positive psychology is an emerging field, although it's been around about 20 years in psychology, where if you think of traditional psychology would take maybe a baseline of where a human is functioning, getting by in the world, has good days and bad days. Normal psychology usually looks at disorders, and when you fall below that baseline, when you're struggling, and looks at how to bring you back up to the baseline. Positive psychology takes people at the baseline and tries to look above that, of how we can all have a life of flourishing, that where you flourish, you have meaning, and find joy in your life. So what I love about this course is it would be academic. Positive psychology is a very well-researched field, but it would also be experiential. So for example, for mindfulness, we wouldn't just read about all the benefits of mindfulness or read about how someone practices mindfulness. We practice mindfulness daily. It's something I'm currently doing in my classroom right now, where we would go back and forth between, where I lead the kids through mindful meditation, one class, the next class we might do a mindfulness activity. In positive psychology, gratitude has been shown to be a real big buffer against hardships in life. So we don't just read about it, we will start a gratitude practice. And it goes on, communication, relationships, there's all kinds of practices the students can do to create this joy, more joy and well-being in their life. As well, I would like to implement a community service element. It's something I did at my former school and have other experience doing, where the students, we would pick a topic, or it could be a few topics, and we would work in class to create a community service project, either at the school, Half Moon Bay, the world, whatever we decide. But that would be a focus that could potentially impact many more students than just students in the class. Thanks.
So, when I advocate for this course, I think it is something which sort of rounds out the high school experience. And looking at the curriculum that Ms. Bunkin has come up with, that it certainly, I believe, certainly, but I believe very strongly that it would get A through G approval, have the kind of academic rigor to challenge students, that they would be working with their Common Core state standards, particularly in the language arts. So those are the speaking, listening, reading, writing applications would be all throughout the course, as well as research, and again, getting out into the community and making that connection away from the classroom to others outside of the classroom. Any questions?
I just have a question. I appreciate that you've put that you're going to seek UCA to G approval. Mr. Boysen, are you leading that effort on both these courses?
We'll work together. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to also make a comment that this sounds like a really cool, first of all, and it actually sounds a lot like a lot of the leadership training I had in kind of the corporate world for a long time, and I'm sure it cost my former employer a lot of money to do that. So to bring something to students, 14 to 18 years of age, like, wow, they get that like probably 15, 20 years earlier than I got it. Like, that's really, really cool, and such a great service to our students to be able to provide that with them at that stage in their life. And I think no doubt will help them get through through college more successfully, and really, as you said, like helping their peers as well. Kind of over time, of course, the trainee becomes a trainer eventually, right? And they kind of spread it, and it seems to fit very nicely with the themes around kindness campaign and just the whole ethos and culture around the school.
It is open
to make it academic is like, wow, to weave it in there at that level is really great.
That's where 10th,
especially
11th,
with outside
and 12th. So the age ranges too. They'll be able to have, as you say, some mentoring or peer relationships between different grade levels.
Yes, it's really contributing to the LCAP Goal 4. So thank you.
Sure.
So just a comment, but I do think it really ties into the social and emotional wellness of those individuals. And also, I've been really looking into kind of how people figure out what they want to be doing, and this could be a real good foundation for kids, as you said, to then go into college or their next career path with a little bit more focused intention about what they want to be doing. So that's, I think it has many benefits as well. So thank you so much for bringing it.
Okay, I have to add a comment too. The fact that you mentioned the community service in conjunction, I know the high school has done that in the past. And I saw what an impact that community service was for my own daughter. When she watched her big brother, who was a type A, he was all about the grade. She folded her arms and she said, I'm going to get the Community Service Award. And she did 4 years later. And now spends her summers doing service work and leadership training throughout the year in addition to her, it's not even part of her major, but it really made an impact on her life. So I'm sure she would have taken the course too. Do I have a motion to approve the positive psychology course? Do I have a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes 5+1.
Thank you.
I have the next item for the board to consider. This is an action item, and we ask that you adopt Resolution 0120, which is a reduction or a discontinuation of classified positions. This is a required resolution that the board consider when we project a reduction or elimination of service being performed by any department or classified employee. We seek your approval, and we don't anticipate giving layoff notices until the required March 31st date. Any questions?
So do I have a motion to approve?
It's a resolution.
It's a resolution. Okay, and a second? And this is roll call. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5+1.
Thank you.
Next we come to the audit report.
The audit report, and we ask the board to approve the report of the audit ending the June 30, 2019, corresponding to the presentation.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. None opposed, so motion carries 5+1. Next, go ahead.
The next item, it's about approval of the phase 2 of the master plan, the facilities master plan. And the master plan that it's based on proposition M and measure M, and we ask the board for approval of the facilities plan, phase 2.
Do I have a motion to approve the facilities master's plan?
So moved.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And the next is approval of resolution 0220. It's to support the application of eligibility and funding authorization of signed applicants. That would be Dr. McPherson and myself. And so I ask for adoption of resolution.
So this will be a roll call vote, but do I have a motion? Yes.
I just make a point of order. Typically, what we've done in the past, and I don't know if this is a strict procedure, but typically we'll, right after the quick introduction, we do a motion to approve and a second. Then we pause after that for questions or comments.
That's what we, yeah.
Yeah, and then we'll go to the roll call.
I'm sorry, do we have a motion? And a second?
A second.
Okay, thank you. Discussion now. Question?
Ask the question, because I'll answer even if you don't ask it.
I guess I just wanted to be explained a little more.
Perfect. This is basically an opportunity for us to sign for grants, right? For school facility program. The district has not put in grants, put in applications for funding from the state for many years. And this will add to our ability to modernize our facilities. So in that third paragraph, you'll see submit applications for eligibility determination for modernization, new construction, and it very well may be that there are matching grants from the state so that our bond can be made double. Well, not double. I will tell you, in my past experience, you can find some items actually get matching grants. But, you know, there will be some increase, definitely.
There's no cost.
The cost is just our staff to like put in with these grants and do that type of thing.
So this is a roll call vote.
Aye.
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 Motion passes 5+1. Next is approval of agreement with the landscape architects.
We are asking the board to approve a landscape architect's proposal. And this is something that started back in the spring, and it is the follow-up to that. Now we are asking the board to approve the landscape architects, SSA landscape architects, the amount of $81,408 to develop the mitigation and monitoring of and maintenance plan. So this is for our high school. And
Does it actually include the planting, or is this just design?
it's only the design.
Okay. And it was originally written in, and I did it out of order, but anyways, this isn't resolution. It was originally written in and dated in July with a good for 15 days.
What Mr. Crawford has been in communication with the city and with, and this is what it was proposed then, and he has gotten that communication to say that it stands as it is moving forward.
Just to give some more background on this is because the lights project at the high school changed. Those lights changed because of neighbor and city requirements. And then part of the requirements with the neighbor and the city, as I understand it, was to figure out how to plant these trees for mitigation of glare off those lights. So Mr. Crawford has been working with the city and also to make the good on this, but the whole thing was, this was originally negotiated back in June, but Mr. Crawford did talk recently to them, and they know that it's coming for approval tonight. But it's something we have to do by the city and by the neighbors as part of that project, and I believe there was CEQA done on that, and all kinds of environmental that you saw in the past. To not do it would incur liability and risk.
And then this is the cost just for is this the actual work?
This is the landscape architect, so this is the design, and there is construction and bid documents, but phase 4 would be the construction phase. I believe this is just for, the scope of work is for the design itself.
So we know that students that go through our new design class have an excellent job.
That's where they're gonna go.
I do wish that this could be done sort of by volunteers, but because of the nature of the work we have to do with Division of State Architect and with our city partners and with community partners, this is really just the cost of doing business. It would surprise you how much money we spend on landscape design. But it also does come, as I understand, out of the bond.
Correct.
So this money couldn't be used for operations or for teacher pay anyway.
Thanks. Do I have a motion to approve? A second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes 5+1. Okay. So our, let's see, future board agenda items, approval of the Cabrillo Unified School District Governing Board policy, updates and adopt the proposed revisions as recommended by CSBA. Future events, January 21st, new student registration begins. January 20th is Martin Luther King Day. The 29th is Cunha 5th grade parent night. Also January 29th is 8th grade parent night at the high school. February 1, we will have a governing board retreat, and we'll be focusing on reviewing some of the strategic planning materials that we worked on about a year and a half ago, and starting to align what the potential foundation pieces by which we make decisions within the board. So it's nice to be forward-looking. So that's an excellent opportunity for us. The February 4th, Big Lift Collaborative meeting, February 4th, Chamber Education Committee meeting. February 13th will be our next governing board meeting. We didn't quite get through all of our conversations, so we will return to closed session for a few minutes. And so with that, the meeting is adjourned.